Well, folks, we are in it now. Happy post-Labor Day. George Brauchler with The George Show, 710 KNUS. It's not Monday, it's Tuesday. It feels like Monday for me. Billy and I, of course, had the day off, a nice long weekend. Weather today, a pretty cool 79 degrees. That's relative, by the way, to the temperatures throughout the rest of the week and the ones in the rearview mirror. Tomorrow, 88 degrees. That's the first time a little pictogram has a cloud in it. Thursday, we go back to a bright ball of fire at 92 degrees. Friday, 90 degrees. And then lightning bolts again, folks. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just in time for baseball. That's a little bit heartbreaking, but it looks like it's going to happen. Lightning bolts Saturday and Sunday, 90, 80. And then next Monday, we plummet down to 75 degrees. Huge swings in temperature. I blame it on Billy's love of German automobiles and the fossil fuel burning nature of those engines. So, buddy, that is 100% your fault. Big
Absolutely.
weekend, lots to catch up on. You and I did nothing to talk about what we did with our time.
Nothing at all.
No, nothing. I mentioned one thing. That was about the mayor of Denver getting him on the radio. But other than that, man, what did you do? Was it all trivia all the time, all radio all the time?
It was a lot of radio. Yeah. Did a lot of radio. Other
Even
things around the
yesterday?
house. Yeah. I had two
What?
shows yesterday. Yeah. I was up at 6 a.m.
Oh,
cutting
my
shows.
goodness.
I know. I question my life choices often. And so, yeah, but I did two shows yesterday, two on Sunday and two Saturday and one Friday, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of talking to myself, which explains a lot about my personality. Yes. And there were a couple of times where, this is awful, but lead singer of Smash Mouth dies yesterday morning.
I saw that. I saw that.
I had cut a break earlier that wasn't going to air until later in the day, but I cut a break earlier. He's about to die, very, touching, etc. I'm like, damn it. And I got to figure out which one of those breaks I did to go back and correct it. Because otherwise, by the time that I did it, it was going to be wrong. So figured it out. Had to do that one. That was awful. Losing Jimmy Buffett and Steve.
Big ones.
Yeah.
Are we doing a lot of Jimmy Buffett bumper music? Are we allowed to monkey around with the bumper music?
It is. This little computer system that they've installed that is supposed to be an upgrade is not very user friendly. Surprise. So it is much more difficult for me to manipulate some of these things. And sometimes I think that the people that designed it just wanted to punish us behind the board.
Yeah, and let's get the venting for anything management related out of the way in the first hour, because we know there's no chance anybody's listening. And I take solace in that fact. Like I feel like at 8 o'clock, if we started bad mouthing folks,
there'd be issues.
We'd have
meetings.
There'd be issues. They'd be rolling out of bed in sort of some cigar and food stained robe or something like that, wondering, is this my house? Robe. Yeah, it's just, I don't want to do that.
No. That was your weekend.
Yeah, man, it feels like it was forever. And in part, it was because, I wasn't here Friday. Was Big Pete in here?
Yeah, he was. It was nice.
And that went well, I take it?
Yeah, it went well. We did a lot of back to school stuff, which is kind of cool.
Okay, cool. Thursday, I left here, took care of a bunch of business later in the day, drove up to this thing that I went to where I got a chance to listen to some folks talk, some of the big elected officials. And it occurs to me that there are no more elected Republicans anywhere. Like I heard, and it wasn't billed as it's not intended to be a Democrat thing, but I heard from the governor, I heard from Senator Hickenlooper, I heard from Mike Johnston, and I heard from, I'm going to butcher his name, but the new mayor down in Colorado Springs, who's not a Democrat, by the way, but also not a Republican. He's a hell of a nice guy. I'd love to get that guy on the radio too. And I told Billy off air, I spoke to Mayor Johnston. Also a hell of a nice guy. And I've known Michael for years, Mike Johnston. And he says to me, hey, I think I'm coming on next week.
That's
and I'm
surprised
like,
us.
on the radio? Because we didn't know that. We haven't heard from your guys. And to his credit, he's like, I think that they're just a little, gun shy about coming on conservative radio. And I said, but he goes, yeah, but I've told him, I know you, man. I mean, we need to have the conversation.
Yeah, we're not going to submarine him.
No, I mean, that's not the point of this thing, man. I mean, what good does it do to just do a quick kill on someone and then not have him come back ever again? And I wouldn't do that anyway. Listen, if this guy can, and the jury's out, right? If this guy can figure out the homelessness thing, there's no ceiling on where he could go. Honestly, if he can figure out Denver and do the homelessness thing, that's it. It's this dude's going to be talked about.
Yeah.
It's state and national circles beyond this. So
and I was at least I thought it was a good move that he talked about late last week, increasing police patrols in and around businesses downtown because of homeless issues.
yeah,
I love the fact that he's acknowledging it, that he's not taking the usual tactic of we need to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
No, in some situations, no, we don't. No.
You know, he's also now, and this is a good sign, taking flack. You know, he did that list of potential communities in which these.
Yeah.
And so, of course, as you can imagine, NIMBYism is legit. And I'm a guy who's gone NIMBY. I mean, you know, I want nuclear power, but I don't want it in my community. You know, like I don't want the plant in my community. So I get all that stuff. But so far, at least the articles I've read, is he's staying the course, man. He's like, I get it. We're going to keep rolling this plan out. I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to get done. And it's either going to be spectacularly successful or a spectacular failure.
Yep.
But I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully we'll get him on. So I got to do that on Thursday night. And then Friday, I flew to Billings, Montana and we may talk about this later in the show, but one of my best friends, my college roommate.
Yeah,
and I've known
passed away.
And tough. Dale's been on the radio before. Yeah. Colonel Dale's been on a bunch.
He's hung out behind the scenes and stuff.
He's hung out behind the scenes. Super really nice guy. He's got 3 daughters, 2 of whom are CU buffs, and that became a theme throughout this. So,
we're gonna talk about that too.
Showed up, and it just so happened that his daughters were on the flight with me. Now, I have flown so much this year. I've attained some sort of a status where they bumped me to first class. These 2 walked by me. I hadn't seen them in probably a year, but they walked by me, didn't say a thing. I find out from Dale. He's like, hey, they're on the plane. I'll just pick you guys all up and I'll take you guys to the hotel. Hey. And I'm like, they were on the plane. What are you talking about? And sure enough, they were there. And we drove to the hotel, and the next morning got up, did some work, and then went to this memorial ceremony for Dale's dad. Now, Dale's an only child, so it's a little more personal. Yeah, a little more poignant.
Oh, man.
Got the chance to see Dale's mom, Grace, who's just such a sweet woman. I mean, with everything she's going on with, she hugs me and she's like, thank you so much for coming. And I'm like, listen, it's just an honor to be here. Of course, I would never miss this. And I think I first met them 35 years ago when I told Dale's daughters this. Dale graduates from undergrad. This is 93.
Yeah.
And he's a 5th-year senior. He graduates. We'd all lived together for a couple years. And another roommate of ours, Corey Sisler, and I hop in the car just one morning, just wild hair kind of post-college thing. Let's drive up and see Dale. So we just hop in the car. We road trip it. We give him a call, and it's got to be Casper, Wyoming, from a payphone back when they had such things.
Oh, I remember those.
You know, So we're on the phone, and we're like, hey, Dale. He's like, hey, what's going on, guys? Like, we're coming up to see you. Yeah. And totally typical Dale, very placid. He's like, where are you? Like, we're in Casper, Wyoming, man. We're on our way. It's just a few hours. We're going to be up there.
Yeah, we're great.
And then he goes, hey, hang on real quick. And he gets back on the phone. He goes, yeah, my dad says you can't stay here. we were like, both of us like, what? He goes, yeah, no, we're going to have to find, I'll call up a friend, a mutual friend named Scott. I'll call up Scott and see if you can't crash at his place. And I'm like, wow. So one of my, and that wasn't the first time I met Dale's dad, Harold, but anyway, it was, so we get in there, we get into the memorial service, and the Buffs game is starting.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, remember, he's got 2 daughters that are CU buffs. He met his wife at CU. Everybody, the whole Farron family, all Buffs fans, right?
Yeah.
All these people coming in from out of town, and the South Dakotas and the Minneapolis and all the other stuff. And we're on our phones, and Dale's like, man, how is this bad form to be on the phone checking the score while we're doing this? And I said, probably, but
yes.
I will let you know when something happens.
Oh, good.
So periodically I'm walking around while he's gripping and grinning and doing all the stuff you do with these things. And I walk up and I'm like, I am so sorry to interrupt. They scored again, you know, and then we'll walk back. Then we had to, we had to get through the actual memorial service.
Oh no.
And I'm sitting there. They were so nice to let me sit in one of the family rows. I'm like, listen, I'll just sit in the back, you know, really for my benefit and yours, honestly. And they said, no, sit up there. And so there I am, like doing that thing where you tuck the phone into the little fold out, which I had read, right? And I was appropriately moved. And I'm sitting there just checking through that. And from time to time, like, they did it again. easy. You just,
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And so we did that. We wrap it all up. There's a certain freneticism as it's almost like people are being ushered out. Like, hey, it was so good to see you. Thank you for coming. So good to see you. Let's get to a bar. So Dale's wife goes, hey, I'll help your mom finish cleaning up. We loaded the cars and you guys just quickly go. So Dale, his 2 adult daughters, he also has a high school daughter, and I head to this bar nearby, the Red Door or something like that. Yeah. And we're able to watch the last 3 minutes. And before the last 3 minutes expires, in comes Dale's mom, the widow, and she grabs it. So we all sit around.
Oh, how
it
nice.
Was, and if you followed that game at all, man, it was ridiculous.
And the thing that's nice about that for me is that that if Dale's dad was there, he'd be right there next to you at the bar.
He'd be there
right
too,
next to you, and that's kind of nice that rather than the idea of, hey, we kind of rushed through when we got out of the memorial, we want to make sure we got to the bar. The idea is, if Dale's dad was there, the one thing he'd be doing is get your ass out of the church.
Yeah, he'd be like, let's go. Let's
find
go.
the TV now.
Let's go. Let's go and watch this.
That's exactly.
So it was a great way to end that thing. And then they had some other stuff. And then I had to leave that night. I couldn't spend, so I had to fly back. And then Sunday was a 14-mile run.
Again, I question your choices.
But it's not just my choices, it's my body. So I ran up Waterton Canyon, which is, I've never ridden. I've run up there. It is beautiful.
That was your first bad choice. Up.
But the good news is at some point it comes down. So I ran in there a little over 7 miles and I felt good. I mean, I felt good. I wasn't tearing up in it, but I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
But once again, I made the mistake of going up too late. So when it's nice and cool and there's shade and stuff like that, I'm hauling butt and it's doing great. And then at some point I've turned around and I've come back and it's now like 10 o'clock in the morning and the sun has come up. So now the canyon is bathed in heat. And that's when the wheels start coming off the bus. Now at about mile 13-ish, it's now a run walk, which is so embarrassing for me because I'm like, just no matter how slowly you go, just keep going. And there were times where I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. And there's other people walking there, their dogs and bikes and stuff. So I mean, I can't just break down in tears.
No,
you know what I mean? Like I can't just cry the way I want to.
What's wrong with the man?
Yes, that's right. Are you okay, sir?
Exactly.
I am so tired and Thursday.
Yes.
And
I made bad choices.
So, and I'm thinking in my mind too, which is probably wrong. Like, my God, this is only half of a marathon. Like 13.1 miles is only half of a marathon. I hope it starts at 3 a.m. or something because the heat is my mortal enemy. So I finally make it back to the car. I drained 3 20-ounce bottles of water. You know, those little plastic ones you get, whatever. Drove to a convenience store, grabbed a 22 ouncer of Gatorade, downed all that.
Oof.
Went right to a Five Guys, jammed on a hamburger, wrapped in lettuce wrap, of course, because, I cared about my body at the time. Yeah. And then as I'm driving home, I'm like, my legs could be seizing up. I wouldn't even know. Like, I'm incapable of being a safe. If something rolls in front of the car, a kid chasing a ball, that's it. It's vehicular homicide time because I have no ability to do this. So most of yesterday was spent recovering. Just, like the walking around, making that face you make, like,
hurts.
Oh, yeah.
So, speaking of vehicular homicide and such, we had a fun, exciting day Friday while you were gone.
Oh, great.
Speaking
of vehicular homicide, my God, what's happened?
I get a text message from my wife, and this is during the show. And this has happened a handful of times. Over the show.
Killed another person behind the wheel.
No, the first text message is, now don't get mad. Excuse me. Pardon me.
No better way to begin any conversation. But I won the lottery.
Exactly. You're like, wait a minute. I know that anything that's going to follow the text message is going to be negative. But how do I know? How can I promise not to be mad? How can I promise that? And the bottom line is that our oldest daughter, who's a senior in high school, was driving her younger sister to school, and someone ran a stop sign and kind of T-boned her. Not total T-bone into the car door. It was more the back quarter panels on the left-hand side. Now the car can be driven and was driven back home, but it is not roadworthy. So it's not good. So Nice thing is, the people that that caused the accident, they were really nice. In fact, they got the younger daughter to school. They took her. They
Oh,
were like, it's
wow.
our fault. So again, nice people. Nothing's going to go wrong, but it's just going to be a pain. So we are,
And by pain,
yeah.
you mean there is some sort of a phantom whiplash near some sort of a
Yeah, no, luckily,
because I know of an attorney.
Exactly, I've heard.
Yeah.
The luckily it was a neighborhood drive, and so it wasn't going too fast. But she did understand the difference in the size and weight of the car that hit her, because her car did spin a little bit, not a lot, but a little. So yeah. But again, she's
had
driving,
her checked out.
Yeah, everything seems fine. So yeah, so that was the fun thing on Friday that we've been dealing with there. And then we were doing some difficult. This is the funny part when you're talking about the CU game. We were having, my mom was over, and it was really nice because my wife had surgery last week, and so
how's she doing?
Doing good, doing much better. Lots of a little pain still, but doing well. Thank you for asking. And so mom's over, and we're having some talks about money and some other stuff. And I check, and I checked the phone, and the first time I saw the CU score, I thought that it was reversed, because I saw the final, and because I didn't, I had forgotten that it was playing that time, and I look over, and I'm like, oh, they lost. No, wait a minute. They won.
Oh my gosh, buddy,
so,
that game.
Yeah. So at first I'm stopped, and then I stopped in the conversation, and I'm just like frozen. And mom looks over and she goes, "What?" I'm like, CU beat TCU, and she goes, "What?" And so then we start texting other friends and stuff.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And we went and watched. We waited till a little bit later in the afternoon, and then watched. They had about a 15 to 18-minute highlight package that was really nicely done.
The whole thing.
So,
I don't know if they win another game or win all the games or something in between, but.
Well, I heard conversations yesterday, because what was it? The line on the over under was 3.5 games before the season. And so there was lots of conversation.
Pretty sure this wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were counting CSU.
Exactly. And so the neat thing was, I heard a lot of conversation yesterday about what does this do to that line? What does it do for the betting line? And the fact is, most of the money right now is on the over. And so how does that possibly change? And so it was just an interesting conversation I ran into yesterday. And then I also had, we won't talk about it a lot, but my soccer team was absolutely embarrassed while both my brother's team and my son's team won.
Oh, the mockery.
And, so it was awful. And they won. Well, oh no, sorry. My son's team lost. My brother's team won. My son's team played well. My team played like crap, as if they had just met each other in the parking lot. And it was awful. It was painful. And I worked my butt off in order to have the gap in my recording schedule to watch the game, and I shouldn't have bothered. So yeah, that was. So I like the fact that you had a good.
Buddy, the CU thing was so insane, and in part, I think there's a couple different factions of people out there. One who wanted to see Dion fall flat, like they wanted to see the Buffs fall apart. And some of the great joys of the outcome of this game are the number of people who had to eat crow and like buckets of it. And a lot of those people are on TV. Yeah. Like the ESPN guys, there was a one pictogram thing I saw where it had all of these college experts and who they picked to win the game. It was TCU across the board, except one dude. I can't remember who it was that had picked CU, but the idea of writing him off early. Now, the opposite is going to be an issue. Like, how do we show up against Nebraska, who obviously an arch enemy for a long time, or opponent? They're coming into town this weekend. I wish I could go, but apparently it's a lot like Taylor Swift getting tickets to this thing anymore.
Now it is,
which is nuts.
Yeah, I've got a little bit in the news. We'll talk about how ticket prices have gone through the roof, and all of a sudden everybody's buying the gear and everything, which is great. Which is one of the reasons you bring him in.
I just love the whole, hey, we keep receipts, and then he's calling out different reporters. He's like, you believe now? You believe? I'm just like, it was insane. It was at the end, it was like haymakers with the touchdowns. It was like watching the end of Rocky 2.
Yeah. My brother was watching it live. Yeah.
Bam,
he told me.
Bam. Like, this is insane. Shedeur Sanders throws for 510 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I think 37. What?
Yeah.
What is good? That's not CU football.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That Travis Hunter kid.
Oh, that was amazing. Wow. And the thing is there was a story that someone had offered him over $1 million to transfer away from CU. And he's like, no, I bought into Coach Prime. And this is what happens.
Can you do that? Can you offer a kid $1 million to transfer away? Is that a thing anymore?
Evidently. It was in the story. I was curious too when I read that. I'm like, I'm just going to read more of the story. I just got to talk about and the idea that, and again, Coach Sanders does have somewhat of a divisive personality. that he can
Yeah.
rub people the wrong way based on how he approaches things. But guess what? Coach McCarthy also did that.
That's true too.
And so that idea of those big, strong personalities, and I think at some level you need that, especially in a big time college program, that you have to be that leader of men and say, I'm going to do this, and here we go. And you buy into it. If you can get that team rowing in the same direction, this is what can happen.
I think
I was so impressed.
The other thing he's done, and I read a very nice article on this in the Wall Street Journal, is that if this turns out to be a successful model, it will have blown up the NCAA because the transfer portal, all that stuff, guy brought in 50 plus new players into the program. You know, if this works, and again, there aren't contracts anymore, right? Like there aren't, it's not like in the pros where you sign someone to 4 years and such an amount and you can, there's no stability anymore. This will blow up the NCAA.
Yeah, which would be great.
Very, very interesting to see how this goes. But I'm excited. I've got tickets for me and the boys to go to the CU-CSU game.
Oh, nice.
Meanwhile, while I was off doing the funeral stuff, Trey didn't want to go apparently, but the other boys all went to CSU, and they did not fare well. They were good for a field goal through much of the game, and then decided to turn it on to only get spanked by 2 times the number of points that they put up. It looks like it's going to be another long season for the Rams. I want them to be good.
I do too.
I really do. I mean, especially because now, you know, now that Trey is up there, I want to give him some reason to want to root and fly the colors and all that. And also because I expect the Buffs to do well this year, I'd love CSU to be great when we spank them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want them to be awful. I don't want it to be like every other school out there that played some nursing college, no offense, nurses, out there last week in order to get their numbers puffed up. I don't know. I want CSU to be great for a lot.
Yeah, you want to make it feel like it's not the varsity playing the JV. You want to have an actual competitive.
Would it be awesome if we had 2 top 25 teams in the state of Colorado?
Good.
And maybe throw the Air Force Academy in there too. I mean, I'd love to think that we could have super competitive Division I football across the board, but so far it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Again, a week from now, you and I might be having a conversation about what a letdown the Buffs were. I mean, how did you get crushed at Folsom in the home opener against Big Red?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And my favorite thing, though, is, you know, why the Nebraska has the N on the side of the
helmets.
I do.
I know it.
Stands for knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. In fact,
I love all those old jokes, that old rivalry. I miss that rivalry.
Me too.
That intensity. But
and there was some clip, someone made a meme of it where kid from Nebraska is on, and in all earnestness, he goes, nobody's going to be talking about Colorado when we win the Big Ten. And then it's followed by someone engaging in about 30 seconds of sincere belly laughter.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, just
like, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. It could happen. I don't know. But the idea of Nebraska in the Big Ten is just, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I mean, I'm a Big 8 kid. I remember Big 8, and then we grew to Big 12, and then all of a sudden now it's like we're just going to have a few super conferences, is my guess.
Yeah, it's going to end up with 3 super conferences, and none of them are going to make sense, and it's all going to be about money and
absolutely
and prestige, and that's all it's going to be, is because you're going to have in these super conferences just enough patsies and pancakes so that everybody else can feast and get enough of it. I don't know. I think it's going to be really bad.
At this point, we're free to dream. Is there any chance at all that as we see 3 Heisman finalists waiting for the decision, 2 of them are Buffs, Shedeur Sanders and Travis? I mean,
it could be.
Right now, I'm just going to dream big.
One is a possibility at least. I think that, you know, again, if the team plays well enough, I think you've got a chance of one, because again, Coach Prime brings the spotlight. And that's one of the things that is kind of, you ignore the flyover country. It's why Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray were more or less ignored, because, you know, Malone and everybody else on the team, nobody demands that spotlight. And, you know, that Prime does. So you could get
that. It's such a ridiculous story.
Oh, it's silly.
But I love that it's us.
Yeah.
It could have been anywhere, but mercifully, I don't think we get him if the program wasn't so bad last year. You know what I mean? If we're not 1 in the season, I think it becomes like if we had been a bowl team and we were looking for a new coach. By the way, if we're a bowl team, we're probably not looking for a new coach, but I think it becomes harder. But right now it's like he's tied last year's win record.
Yeah. Boom. And that's the way, if you want to come into a big time program, Yeah, it's easy to do that. To come in because the where you were is so low that you can only go up. I think it's that, and I think the first time he visited campus was something that kind of sold
Yeah,
him
he
as
did
well.
say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a really, really special campus. So
Yeah, and I think for folks that are listening here in Colorado, you know the secret, and that is everybody outside of here presumes that we're buried in snow about 8
Yes.
months out of the year, when it's not even really 8 days out of the year.
Yeah, not at all.
You know, we're an incredibly sunny state, and we sell a lot of marijuana, and so
Yeah.
that has attracted all the wrong kinds of
Yes,
people.
yeah.
But nonetheless, here we are, and
Yeah.
now Mike Johnson's to go full circle, fixing that by
He
trying,
is.
or at least trying to fix all that with the mini houses.
Oh, I hope so.
Listen, we have hit that 30-minute
Yes, we
mark,
have.
which tells you that we're in prime shape, no pun intended, for our last conversation. We're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, of course, it's going to be that good stuff. That's the Thorpe Report. And in the Thorpe Report is where you get all the legitimate local news of the day, followed by the good stuff, which is you choose the news. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's that time of the 6 o'clock hour where we get to be made smarter about all the local legitimate news that's out there. And to that end, we're giving it to our king of snakes. That's an off-air conversation reference.
Yes, it is.
William.
Thank you, sir. Hey, guess what's in the forecast? Snow.
Whee! Oh, I thought you were going to say snakes.
Yeah, no, snow. There was a wintry scene yesterday at Snowbird Resort in Utah. Several inches of snow dusted higher slopes as well, right around Salt Lake City. And the storm moved into Colorado Monday afternoon, bringing severe weather to parts of the western slope, along with some severe, strong non-thunderstorm wind gusts that got up to 107 miles an hour. Basically, temperatures way up in the high country are expected to drop down to about 35 degrees last night and tonight. So we could get first snow of the season, but as we know, 32 is when water freezes, so probably not likely.
True? Still?
Yeah, but the issue is but the issue is that here in the next couple of weeks, we could see our first dusting of snow up in the mountains. So just get prepared for it.
Meanwhile, there's still big balls of fire.
Yes. Yeah. It's really hot
on all the pictures.
You discovered that yesterday.
Oh my God, buddy.
Yeah.
Just
so sorry. Family said this is awful. Their 10-year-old daughter is now paralyzed after an off-duty Jefferson County deputy slammed into the back of their car. Crash was reported from the Colorado State Patrol. Deputy was going 70 miles per hour on I-70 when he hit the car that was slowing down for traffic.
Well, 70 on I-70 doesn't sound crazy, but the traffic stop does.
Yep,
what
exactly.
the hell?
When things in front of you. How did you not see that? It happened on July 15th. Lucy Harris was sitting in the back seats with her 7-year-old brother, and their mom, Jennifer, slowed down for traffic. They were heading to the mountains to meet up with their dad. The report says that it was a clear, dry day when the deputy drove the Chevy Tahoe into stopped traffic. So, yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. He got a citation for careless driving causing bodily injury, but the family's questioning if that's enough, especially because Lucy's had her spine severed. So,
oh, my God.
Yeah. So
buddy, here's the problem with the law is that it's pretty low when it comes to careless driving. If the DA were to determine, and the DA can override this and determine it was reckless behavior, and 70 on 75 doesn't sound reckless. The inability to see might, that could make it reckless causing serious bodily injury, could make it vehicular assault, which is a felony. But honestly, what they really need to do is pick up the phone and call Dan Caplis, because that's the only way they're going to be able to approach anything towards the caregiving they need. That's God, that's awful, buddy. How awful. Jesus.
It's horrible.
So bad.
Yeah. And elsewhere, we have a 16-year-old that's being held on suspicion of first-degree murder. And he could find out this week whether or not prosecutors are going to file charges in juvie or adult court. They arrested the teen Saturday, 10 days after Miguel Angel Saucedo Arrojo, 49, was shot and killed in his home at the 900 block of Parrott Street. He and his son heard someone stealing scooters from their backyard shortly before 5 a.m. They jumped into a pickup truck, gave chase. They backed off after someone shot at them. They returned home, and then someone drove back by the house, opened fire, hitting the man. Yeah. Sitting inside.
Murder, adult, buddy. How old's this guy?
16.
Yep, 16. You should be charged as an adult. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to the house.
Outrageous. And especially with how watered down Colorado has made its juvenile murder laws. I mean, you've got to at least get that.
You've got to go after him as an adult. We do have a potential strike at Kaiser Permanente locations less than 4 weeks. For months now, the coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions has been working to come up with a new deal with the healthcare giant before the current contract expires, but that expires on September 30th. Negotiations between Kaiser and the unions will continue this coming week. We will see what happens. Also, there's a family of a missing Arvada teen that believes she may be in danger. The teenager was last seen a month ago, and they're saying the 17-year-old was in contact with a 29-year-old man living in Denver. She was last seen the beginning of August. She left her home Sunday evening, and they haven't heard from her since.
What?
Shortly before she left the home, she made a call on the home phone to this 29-year-old man who had previously approached her, given her a burner phone, cash, and also and methamphetamines. That's who they believe that she left with. So they are trying to still continue to investigate the case. So not good. Also, Coloradans coming back to town from the mountains following Labor Day weekend encountered delays early yesterday. Eastbound lanes of I-70 were shut down at Eisenhower Tunnel for about an hour and a half. Multi-vehicle crash resulted in serious bodily injuries, but that's all the information I have right now. We also have evacuation orders and pre-evacuation orders along a subdivision of Jefferson County were lifted early yesterday. Foothills Fire Protection District said firefighters were on the scene of a wildland fire near Summit Ranch, but everything is contained now. And as we were talking about, the gamble CU took on Coach Prime is so far paying off in huge dividends. They're getting more and more Prime merchandise out at stores in and around Boulder. They said after the CU Buffs beat number ranked 17 TCU in Fort Worth, Texas, people just came into the shop and trying to buy anything they possibly could.
Good grief.
Yeah. Not just basic merchandise over there at Folsom Field. Crews are already busy preparing and stocking coolers with drinks ahead of the home opener for Nebraska this coming Saturday. They're going to have more vendors available than ever before, and tickets have been sold out for weeks on the resale sites like StubHub and Vivid Seats. The lowest price ticket as of yesterday was $390. That's good.
You know what needs to happen,
really
and I'm
good.
just going to say it out loud. The
Yeah.
Common Sense Institute needs to do an economic analysis of Coach Prime's impact on the
Oh, that would
economy
be
because
great. Yeah.
undeniably, man, that dude has brought so much more money in.
Oh, it's wonderful. I think that's fantastic. And that's why you kind of want to have that big program. It does help the businesses and everybody around, and think of all the bars and the restaurants that are going to have more people stopping in. It's fantastic. And how good it is for the student body, because I've known student bodies that have, been at colleges and universities that have had poor sports teams. And unfortunately, your son and my son are currently at one of those, Colorado State University.
Yeah.
Kind of
Well,
hard. It's
listen,
hard,
he could have
hard
done
to
it.
fly the flag.
Yeah, I don't get it.
well,
One other
that's all I
thing, by
get.
the way, my Rock Canyon Jaguars, and I say my because I still have a boy there, and I'll have another one for the
Still yours. Yes.
2 big wins so far.
Oh, wow.
20-0 versus Pooter, and 42-7 versus Smoky Hill. So they've given up
Wow.
8 touchdowns across 2 games, but put up
Jeez.
62. Feeling good so far. But again, Douglas County is quickly becoming, without, if you can pull out a Regis or a Cherry Creek, it's just simply one of the most competitive divisions in fill in the blank sports out there. It's insane. I don't know how these, whatever. But anyway, super happy for the Jags.
That's
Go Jags.
fantastic.
Great day to be a Jag.
Oh, excellent. That's all the sports and news and stuff I got.
That's it. That's all you have.
I know. That's it.
That might leave us almost
We
enough
might.
time. We should
Yeah.
cut away for a break so
See
we
what
can come
happens.
back and do You Choose the News with, I think, the endorser, the advertiser, which we never ever get. Stick around and find out if we make it. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Well, hot diggity, we're right here back in the saddle, on the clock. There's plenty of time. You choose the news with Billy T.
Yes, sir. It is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. You choose the news. We have scoured the interwebs for ridiculous stories, given them really stupid headlines, and play this fake radio news game because, well, they continue to pay us for it, and they don't really know we do it. So we'd appreciate it if you'd keep it secret. Okay. Alrighty. Here are your headline choices this morning, sir. Father-son driving lesson ends in jail. Maybe keep it to yourself. Now there's no reason to visit, and you'd think the experts would know. Okay, once again, father-son driving lesson ends with jail. Maybe keep it to yourself. Now there's no reason to visit, or you'd think the experts would know. What's your choice?
You'd think the experts would know.
You would think the experts would know, especially if you are working at a zoo, but evidently not so much. This happens in Grand Rapids, Michigan, John Ball Zoo. It's a report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so you know it's legit. Recently, John Ball Zoo was going to have some things where they're housing some of the animals together. It's an introduction to give the zoo people that visit more of a natural type of a habitat and interaction. So recently, they were going to introduce Chopper, the swamp-dwelling antelope, to Jahari, a pygmy hippopotamus. This happened back in May. It was the first barrier-free introduction of the animals to each other, and that's when Jahari decided to get a little angry and kill the antelope.
What?
Yes, the hippopotamus, during their very first barrier-free introduction to each other, Jahari decided he was having none of that and killed Chopper. Rather quickly, if you know how hippopotami like to do those things. They're
pretty
ruthless.
vicious. Yeah,
Yes,
pretty
they are.
vicious. And
They're absolutely
this
vicious.
wasn't Sick Balls Chopper. This
No,
wasn't
not at all.
from
No.
the old
Yeah.
Stand By Me.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the John Ball Zoo released a statement saying it was likely due to individual animal behavior, as the zoo undertook significant efforts to fully be prepared before, during, and after the introduction of the two animals. Evidently, not so much. You think it was the animals' behavior, as if this doesn't happen out in the wild. Yes, sometimes the animals kill each other, and that's exactly what happened.
That just
yeah.
the hippos, that's what I hear more and more.
Oh,
Just-
they are vicious. Yeah, especially if you watch the ears, it'll tell you how they're feeling. But evidently,
Really?
yeah, you can look at that. And
How do you know this again? I thought your expertise was limited to snakes.
I am a fountain of mostly useless knowledge.
Look at their ears.
How
This
would
is
how would I?
nuts.
When would that come into play? I mean,
I
it
don't
just-
know how you
yeah.
get on the dark webs and start looking around like
know.
hippo ears.
Well, part of it though is that in some ways every zoo is a petting zoo if you're brave enough. Just so. All right.
That's true.
Yeah, it is. Alrighty. So father-son driving lesson ends with jail. Maybe keep it to yourself, or now there's no reason to visit.
Well, listen, I think you're going after something from my recent past, the driving lesson thing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
just
driving
because of
lesson.
Jeffy.
I was thinking of that, except we're traveling to Phoenix for this one. A 49-year-old Phoenix resident has been arrested. Why? Well, because his son still needs to learn a little bit more of how to drive. Although not necessarily the kid's fault. He's only 10. Yes,
What?
10. Yes. Recently,
Hold on, in Arizona,
yes, in Arizona.
you can drive at 10?
Actually, no, you can't.
Oh,
and that was kind of the issue.
dang.
Yeah, so this happened recently when they were receiving calls right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Motorists saying, I think there's a kid driving the pickup truck on the highway. Again, highway. And dad is riding shotgun. The police come up and they get behind the young man driving the pickup truck. He makes an unsafe lane change. They turn on the flashy lights. And he says, nuh-uh, this is GTA, speeds away from them, weaving in and out of traffic for a short period of time. Eventually, he pulls over, and the father, who's riding a shotgun, was arrested on suspicion of endangerment, unlawfully permitting a minor to drive, and, wait for it, having an open container of alcohol in the vehicle.
The 10-year-old? Was
No,
it
the
his
boy.
or?
No, it was the dad's. And of course, you knew alcohol was going to be involved in
I
this.
did, but
Where
I
the
thought
49-year-old is
as
like,
long as you're going to put
"I'm
the
gonna let my
10-year-old
10-year-old
behind the car.
drive."
But wait a minute, did he beat the DUI charge?
I don't know.
Because
But,
listen,
yeah.
that's actually going to be really smart.
Oh.
Because unauthorized minor to drive is just a 0-point traffic infraction of some sort of thing. DUI, man, that's jail and thousands of bucks.
So you are saluting his parenting decision.
Not saluting it, but acknowledging the drunken thought process that resulted in it.
I like how you've already thought this through.
Yeah, it's
I
actually
appreciate
very, very smart. I'm not encouraging anyone else to
Yes.
do this. So note to self, when I
Yes.
get liquored up, get my fourth grader
Yes.
to ride with me.
He has
I mean,
to drive the car.
good God.
I know. That's the whole idea. You knew the entire time. Eventually, this is going to lead to
Ever
alcohol.
wanted to drive, son?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll
Not a
talk you
better time to
through
learn.
it right
And
here.
I love how the kid raced away from the cops, too. He's like, no, I'm going to keep going.
I wonder if his dad turned to him at some point and said,
Yeah.
GTA 5,
Yeah,
son.
exactly.
Let's
Go
do
for
this
it.
thing.
Okay. Now, final choice. Maybe keep it to yourself, or now there's no reason to visit.
Now there's no reason to visit.
Yeah, now there's no reason to visit. That is a question that Oceanside, California is asking themselves. They're a coastal suburb about 40 miles north of San Diego. Beautiful palm trees, and it is almost always perfect beaches, except when the beach isn't there anymore.
Huh?
Inside of Oceanside, California, they have about 4 miles of gorgeous beach that is now running out of sand. Only about a third of the beach you can actually walk on anymore because so much sand is eroded. It's now mostly rocks, pebbles, and other things that are very uncomfortable to either sunbathe, play volleyball on, or do mostly anything. So Oceanside right now is struggling with how can they continue marketing and being a beachside resort and town if they don't have any beach. They're talking about things that have happened years ago in Santa
Virtual
Monica
beach.
and Newport, actually dredging up sand out in the ocean and bringing it in and then dumping it onto the beach there, so that they kind of fake that beach, and then you get those walls around it and things like that Ventura has. And they try to have to do something, so they're going to have to spend money though. All that's going to cost money, and all of that, of course, is tax money. So they need to figure out how they're going to continue to market themselves as this beach resort town when they don't have any sand. And that is it. That is the end of you.
Do you have time to do the advertiser?
Yes, we do. Whee! Today, we are proudly sponsored by Socially Awkward Publications. Yes, today you can order the book called Ooh, That Baby is Ugly and Other Things People Hate for You to Say. Yes, what shouldn't you say in crowds? Things like, I can hardly tell. It really doesn't look that bad, and is that pus? Most people, yes. You also, phrases you should never mention in public.
Like that one.
Things like, people probably won't notice. Who really knows your prison record? And number one, never ask when the baby is due. Socially Awkward Publications,
Lord.
20% off today if you order and tell them you heard it on the show. Alrighty, sir, back to you.
Buddy, that's also disturbing and fantastic at the same time. I don't know what else to do. I think when we come back, we're going to explore a topic we just touched upon in the 6. You probably don't have a best friend, and you're the reason why. I want to explore that with you when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Brauchler back with you here on 710 KNUS. We're not going to jump headfirst into the politics stuff of the day, although there is some of that to talk about as the show goes on. I wanted to talk with you about, we're going to call it a lifestyle topic because it popped up in many of the news feed things that Billy and I look at in the mornings. And one of them is an issue that really hits close to home, if only because of what I did this weekend that I told you about. And it is a survey, that American Perspectives survey, done by the Survey Center on American Life. And it assesses sort of the state of relationships and friendships in America coming out of the pandemic. And one of the results of this is that it becomes a little bit clear that the number of Americans who say they don't have a best friend has continued to increase. So in 1990, same survey says 4 in 10 Americans say they don't have a best friend. 4 in 10, that's 40% say they don't have a best friend. I'm sorry, that's this most recent study. That's up from 25%. That's up from 1 in 4. That's all, or we're headed towards 50% of Americans don't have a best friend. And it turns out it's much worse for dudes than it is for dudettes. Guys tend to have less best friends than others. And it made me wonder, is that true for you? And why is it true? What are the things that impact that? Now, it could be, hey, I had a best friend, but my best friend passed away, or my best friend. I understand those things. I'd love to hear about that. But I started thinking about my own life. And if I have a best friend, and if so, how do you define a best friend? And do you have to have just the one best friend? So, I mean, this is me, just at different stages in my life. I've had best friends, that friend that sort of dominates the time and your spectrum of thought of, hey, I want to go do this with this person, that. But so much of it seems like it was situational and temporal in nature. I mean, when I was a kid in grade school, I remember it was Danny Sturgileski who was my best friend, and we did everything K through 6 together right there at Belmar Elementary I think it's 855 South Garrison Street. Why I know that all these years later, I have no damn idea. But out there in Lakewood, and we were just two of the wicked nerdy kids in terms of, in the very first version of Gifted and Talented that the county ever had, they rolled it out in part at Belmar, and it was a waste of an entire year as they tried to figure out what to do. And it was me, Danny, and Jeff Witt. And we were all good friends, but Danny really became my best friend. And we ended up doing Dungeons and Dragons together. And then lo and behold, we leave 6th grade. He goes to Creighton, which is a feeder into Lakewood. And I don't. I go to Carmody. So temporally speaking, was Danny my best friend? Or we want to hang out? Yes, all the time. But then just moved across town without ever really moving and went to Carmody. And then I ended up with a best friend that I would have through college. Guy named Corey Rickman, who's a super math teacher out at Devlin, where my 2 nieces go. And Corey and I, it didn't start off that way, by the way. Corey had a different best friend in 7th grade, but I made that guy disappear. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. But I was kind of just one of the group of friends. And then over time, that guy moved on. And then pretty soon it was Corey and I. And then all of a sudden it was Corey and me and a guy named Johnny O. Askin. And Jage and Corey and I were like the 3 amigos back when the 3 amigos was a legit Broncos phenomenon. Mark Jackson, I think Vance Johnson, and Ricky Nattiel were the 3. And that was a big deal. And we were kind of the 3 amigos, but we did everything together. Every Friday night or Saturday night was, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Where are we meeting? Are you coming to pick me up? Back when we could drive, all that other stuff. And that went on through college. And then I left and went to college. And Corey went to KU for 2 years and I didn't. And then I got off to college, and I'm trying to think of, my roommate was an awesome guy named Charles Wilson Brown IV, Charlie Brown. And because he was Charlie Brown and he was a Navy ROTC guy, ends up retiring, I think, as an 06. He was a fighter pilot guy, just, super cool. But nonetheless, we could never order pizza to the dorm under his name. because no pizza place ever believed it. This is way before DoorDash. This is like a phone plugged into the wall in the room, if you can, if you can picture that, with a cord, by the way. And I'd catch him from time to time trying to order something from Blackjack or Domino's or whatever. And it was always, no, I swear, Aiden room 23, Charlie Brown. No, I swear, Charles Brown. And then he just gave up and he'd be like, okay, it's George. And so every single pizza ended up being ordered under George. But I wouldn't call Charlie, I'd call Charlie and I good friends, but I wouldn't call Charlie and I best friends. He did a bunch of things on his own. I did a bunch of things on my own. And then lo and behold, Corey transfers back to CU his junior year. And we're roommates. We're roommates for the last 2 years of college together. And in that final year, Dale, who becomes one of my best friends through ROTC, ends up becoming a roommate with us as well. And so I lived with Dale for a couple years, including his 5th year, my first year of law school. Huge mistake, by the way. But we had other good friends in there. Corey Sisler was one of them, different Corey, and Trent Hunton, great guys. I love those guys. Great friends. But best friends, I don't know. So it feels like and then, I don't know how to describe it, but then I get into law school and those guys have all moved on. Dale's gotten commissioned. He's moved on. Corey is, I don't know if he's getting his master's or something smart, but he's moved on. And even though they're still great friends and we hook up from time to time, I end up meeting this guy named Mike Brewer, who is a phenomenal human being. And Mike and I become fast friends our first year. And at least for those last 2 years of law school, when we're roommates together, we're like best friends. Like everything we do, we end up probably doing together, with the exception of the fact that his fiance, Tracy, who's also just a superhuman being, she'd come out from California. Actually, she stayed out there for a little bit. We'd do stuff with her, but it just seems like it was time and place for me. And then when I left law school, I ended up working in the DA's office in Jeffco, and I met this giant human being named Dan Deasy, and Dan and I became best friends for years and years and years. All of those guys I just mentioned, by the way, every single one of them, except Dan Sturgileski, who has since passed away, ended up in my wedding as well. I mean, they were just my best friends that I sort of accumulated over time. But if you made me say there is just one best friend, like right now, if I look back and said, this is my lifelong best friend, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that I have one lifelong best friend. Here's Alexa giving advice. She says, be careful who you say is your best friend. Probably 30 people think they are your best friend. You will hurt so many guys. That's not true. That's not true at all. But then as you progress, thank you, Alexa. Then as you progress through life, then once you get married and you have a family and stuff like that, I don't know. That between that and work, I mean, your best friend becomes your partner, right? I mean, that I just don't know what else. They're still great friends. Another great friend that I end up meeting, and still a great friend, is Dustin Zvonek, who you hear on the show all the time, city councilman from Aurora. Guy's all world. I don't have any politics in my past without Dustin. And in part, it's just because he's been such a great friend. But I'm certain that neither one of us would say, oh, that is my best friend. Just because I don't know how to describe it. It just changes over time. And so it makes me wonder, as I read this Wall Street Journal article, and that's a legit publication, are we past the phase of best friends? Do people still have best friends anymore? And what the hell do you define as a best friend? Getting some text in here. And by the way, you can always text us off the app at 710knus.com. You can check us out, of course, on the Rumble too. I try to get those things up and running, but man, there's a lot of clicking and passwords and stuff. And then you can also, my favorite part is to have the discussion at 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. But that's it. And then then here we are. I mean, I went up to see Dale for the funeral for his dad, the memorial service, because I don't know, man. I don't have a lot. That's a guy that has been at one point my best friend and one of my closest friends for over 35 years. I just wonder, do people have friends like that anymore? Is there a reason why it's harder to have best friends? And this comes on the heel of reading another article. I think it was in the Post, about the fact, and I'm sure if it's in the Post, it wasn't a Post-generated article. It was something from some other newswire. But talking about how many people are traveling single these days. How many folks are like planning trips up into the mountains and around and all that other stuff where they're just going by themselves? And I don't know if it's a mental health thing or not, or if this is just a reflection of, because of the way society is, we have lost the ability to have that very personal, intimate connection with just one other person that you want to spend most of your time with. I don't know. I mean, Billy, I presume you've had best friends. Do you have that one dude or dudette?
Yeah, that's the thing is now it's my wife easily. That's an easy one.
Well, that's what I said too, is that
exactly.
Once you get to that place in life where you get married and you have kids, that's your bestie. That's your whole world.
Yeah,
you know?
I've got I do have some other best friends, a couple of people I'm still in contact with through college. And there's another guy locally here in radio that he and I are pretty good friends. And I would say, that, if you had someone that was outside the family, he's probably as close, that I have right now. But it is weird.
But do this for me. So define what that looks like.
It's
like, how much contact do you have with a bestie these days versus in the past? Like in the past, you'd see guys in school all day, every day. You'd have lunch with them. You'd cut class with them. You'd make fun of people with them. You'd be made fun of by other people together. You know what I mean? Like,
this one guy, that's outside the family circle. We probably text at least minimum every 48 hours, and we probably talk on the phone about once a week.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and it is. And part of it is, though, that he's very outgoing and does he has a lot of the inertia and understands my schedule to keep the conversations going, where sometimes I would not. I may let it go a little bit further than that. The other one is
hold on. What did you just say?
He reaches out and
okay.
Sure that
I thought you were talking in terms of sometimes the conversation, you're not fulfilling the conversation obligations. I'm like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I mean, no, not at all. But the idea is that he will. There are times in which I can get so busy that I will forget, and I do that numerous times with other things, and so because sometimes I get lost in necessarily the moment, and I'm not planning everything else that needs to happen later on. So it's good that he holds me accountable for that. And so there are times in which I sit there and I'm like, we haven't talked on the phone for a week. Okay, I've got to make this phone call. I've got to make sure, to reach out to make sure that everything is cool. It's just one of those things. It takes a little bit of effort at times.
That's right. The effort. How long has this been going on?
I've known him 5 years now.
Okay, 5 years. And do you have?
Yeah.
As I'm describing, this is just the me part. I don't know. Do you have those time and place kind of best friend things over periods of time? That
the other one would be my brother, but because of his schedule and my schedule, we don't talk as much as we should on the phone. Normally, that's about every 2 weeks. I'd like it to be more, but it's just our schedules are crazy at times, and so it doesn't always match up. More times than not, can I call you back? Oh, I can't call you. Okay, this, We a lot of times.
How often you guys chatting?
About every 14 days normally. Yeah,
that's still for my perspective, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. And so it's nice. And the nice part is it's nice to check in, with him and just kind of find out everything. It's a soothing conversation. There are certain times in which, as I talk about, when Spencer's back in the house, there's a balance in the force. And when I can check in with my brother and have a conversation, it brings a balance to the force. It brings a real balance to my life. But yeah, I've got those transitional. There was a kid that lived in my neighborhood growing up, Scotty Drybread. I still remember him. And he moved away. And that was crushing for me at the time because he was basically my first best friend. And then he moved away. And then you had other friends that kind of came in and out of my life. A kid moved in next door. It was he and his 3 sisters. And he was 2 years older than I was. And we became really good friends.
Yeah.
And that was through middle school and part of high school. And then his family had the audacity to move back to Seattle.
Why would you do that?
I know. So
what's going
it's
on?
a beautiful town. But still, so I get it. It was really tough. So that was hard on me as well. And then I had a couple other friends through school that we kept in touch up through college, and then after college for a little while, and then life just, it just got in the way to a certain extent. And there's one of the guys that I roomed with in college. He and I are more social media friends. We don't talk on the phone a lot, but we get back in touch with each other and chat on social media because we have several interests that we still have right now that keep popping up. And so we talk about them and everything else. And it was kind of difficult. He wanted to know if I wanted to go to the Pantera Metallica concert with he and a couple other guys that I know from college. And I just couldn't swing it this time around based on my schedule. So that kind of hurt.
So Billy, I'm interviewing you now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Define for me what makes a best friend.
Oh, that's a good question. For me, it's the idea. Okay, this is the weird part about it. and I'm going to go to Quentin Tarantino and specifically Pulp Fiction. I know it is. It's the idea of enjoying a comfortable silence. It's not having to fill the space when you're hanging out with a person with a bunch of BS. It's that you're okay sitting there and letting nothing happen.
Oh,
that
it's
you
like
are
the radio.
content. Yeah, exactly. That you're content enough that you guys can sit there, or ladies can sit there, and you can be watching a show, or you can be doing something, and you don't have to force a conversation. That it's just kind of you can hang for a while. And so, I know I talked earlier, my buddy here in town, that it's not. It sounds like I have to force the conversation, but no, it is that time that I have to make the effort. But he and I can go somewhere and we can have lunch. We can be hanging out and we don't have to be talking the entire time. It's that idea of being able to, if you're riding in the car with someone, this is great. This is a great test. If you're riding in the car and there is that comfortable silence between the two of you, that's important. That to me is the sign of a best friend. It's not only conversations that happen, but it's the conversations that don't happen. And that, I think that's kind of the issue, that they're in tune with you enough to kind of know where you are in your headspace and where you are emotionally. So,
or to realize that when you're not talking, it's because you've nodded off at the wheel.
Exactly.
And they're shaking you back
like,
into.
Hey, yeah.
And by the way, that's a neat little trick me and my then best friend, Corey Rickman, did, where you could talk someone into, if you were driving down, let's say I-80.
Yes.
Westbound out of Wyoming. As you pass by other cars, you slump over the wheel as the driver, and your friend
reaches
shaking the hell out of you. And as you pass by a car, especially with kids in the back,
great.
the looks are just priceless.
That's
I mean,
great.
You really need to have someone working a camera back then, because they're like, oh my God.
Oh, that's fun. We used to, we mastered the one where you wedge your knees up against the bottom of the steering wheel, and then you slowly make your hands go over the top like you're turning into the traffic. That makes people leave quite a bit.
I'm going to have to practice that one too.
Yeah.
We should talk about these things now only because Jeff is out of the car.
Yes,
I talked
should,
to him at the 7 getting into school, because these are things where, oh my goodness.
Oh, yes.
I'm interested to know from folks, and call us, please, 303-696-1971. What defines a best friend?
And who was your best friend growing up and why?
Yeah, who was your best friend and why? Like, I am trying to think of, like, I remember pretty specifically, one, when you're roommates in college, I guess you could have a best friend out of that. That would be maybe for me a little weird, because I always lived with a best friend. I mean, other than that first year where it was a really good friend, Charlie.
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. But I can't envision back in the day when you had phones attached to walls and cords and stuff that. I remember Friday nights, you'd always go out on a Friday night. You want to find the party and all that. If I didn't call at a certain time, Corey, the only times Corey Rickman ever called on the phone, I'm still not sure he knows how to use a phone. He would call to merely ask, why haven't you called?
Why haven't
you know what I mean?
called?
Like, it was always waiting for me to call. And sometimes when you called, you'd get something called a busy signal, which I know sounds crazy.
It sounds weird.
Yeah, but you do that. Yeah. And then, but it was like the idea of, I could never imagine like making plans to go out that didn't involve him, or saying, hey, I got to go do this thing. You want to meet there.
Remember when you had to do the plans for Friday or Saturday night, and you'd call and the parent would pick up the phone.
Oh, yeah.
And now you've got to make small talk with the parent for 2-3 minutes until your friend gets on the phone. And that
hello,
is,
Mrs. Cleaver.
Yeah,
is Wallace home?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is awkward. That, to me, I think that is a social skill that this generation of kids is missing. That interaction with the parents and that conversation. I think you learned a lot about conversation, how to read people, and how much to divulge and how much not to divulge. Yeah. I think that's a skill that's missing.
I should probably ask the kids this too, because at this stage in their lives, I'd had a best friend, at least one, just temporarily. I don't know if maybe Amanda does. I think there's one friend that she hangs out with every time she comes back, way more than the others. But I don't know if she would call him a best friend. And then Trey, he's got a group of 3 or 4 really good friends, but I don't, maybe one of them's a best friend. That's interesting. I just don't know. Is this day and age designed for best friends?
I know Spencer's gone through a couple of best friends, and some were good and some were bad at the time. And he's settled into a really nice group right now, and has got a really good best friend. And both of my girls have best friends that they have known since first grade.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, in fact, the one thing that's really kind of interesting is my oldest daughter, Katie, who's a senior this year. Her best friend, they have never gone to the same high school, but she lives 2 blocks away from us.
Okay.
And so they still see each other all the time and are still best friends.
That's nice. How old?
They're 17.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yep. And then my 14-year-old, she's almost going to turn 15. And that's scary. That's going to happen in like 10 days. But when her best friend, they've known each other, I think it was kindergarten or first grade. And this friend has moved away and moved back and moved around the city. And it is still the best friend. In fact,
I love these stories.
Yeah.
I just don't have that. Like maybe
in fact,
maybe the norm now is BFFN, best friends for now. I don't know.
That is kind of the norm. And it's nice to see these girls and
That's
continue
really nice.
that relationship. In fact, there was a point when my youngest daughter, when Gwen's best friend, her family was going through a divorce. It was a really difficult time. And she would stay over at her house for a week or more at a time. And we'd talk to mom and dad, and they were like, yeah, things are tough here in this tension. We got to do this. And is it okay if she stays? I'm like, she can stay as long as she wants.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So I always refer to her as the other daughter. Yeah, she is. And she's like that.
Mostly to the police.
Exactly.
When you're reporting things.
Exactly.
Like the other daughter did it.
Yeah. But again, the fact that she's in the house or anything else, it is the most comfortable thing to have her around. And it's really nice and it's really cool. So, yeah, that's.
Listen, lots of texts coming in. Pick up the phone and call us. Have this conversation. I know it seems a little personal and intimate, but I'm interested to know in light of this study that, man, it's up to 40% of Americans say they don't have a best friend at all. That's up from 25% in just 1990. So going back a couple decades here, 3 decades here.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And I had a best friend in 1990 when this study would have come out. I'm just interested to know, how do you define a best friend, and do you have one? Had some text coming in from folks. Oh, hey, I'm 70. Well, call in. I want to hear this conversation.
Tell us about your best friend. I want to hear about what this person means to you.
Yeah, and what defines a best friend? Is it talking every day? Is it FaceTiming every day, texting every day? Or is it I talk to him once a month or something like that? I don't know. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler on The George Show at 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy your next vehicle at
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Text coming in. Here's some. Our society's missing connection, which is why there is so much struggle with anxiety and depression. And we have so many dogs. I wonder, too, if dogs aren't replacing the other friendships, right? Because dogs don't talk back. And kids, maybe that's it. It says a friend will, this is our buddy right here, a friend will help you move, a best friend will help you move a body. That's true. Here's one. This is Alexa. I think as adults, we generally have several really close friends. The way I defined it is if you called them and said, quote, I really need someone to talk to, they drop everything within reason, like they're not at their kid's wedding, and ask what's going on. Also with close friends, time can pass, months or even years, and you pick up as if no time has passed. That last one's interesting to me, because is that like a best friend, a close friend? I get. Is that a best friend that you can go months or years without talking with them? It's just, maybe it's all that time of life when you have it. Here's another one example. My roommate and I used to be friends. She got COVID twice and did absolutely nothing to try and prevent me from getting it, despite me having medical concerns and risks. We don't talk anymore. How can you be friends with someone who doesn't give a damn about your well-being at the end of the day? I think that's totally fair. That's a fair question. We're going to go right to the phone lines here. Our friend Janet from up in Greeley, you're on 710 KNUS. Janet, what do you think?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks for calling in.
I think I have a couple of thoughts that are just kind of, I don't know if you can tie them together for me or not, but for me, I think people are so different from each other that's why we can't nail down what a best friend really means, because it's a different thing to a different person. For instance, Billy, a best friend is someone you don't have to talk to. Alexa, a best friend who will stop everything and come talk with you, so it's...
How about for you, Janet? Do you have a best friend right now, like
no.
this moment?
No.
Have you ever had one?
I have. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And sixth grade through post-college, I had a really good friend. She was Paige. She was my best friend. Absolutely. Best friend in the world. I became a Christian, and that really changed the dynamic of our friendship. And so that fell away.
Well, wait, hold on. Explain that, though, Janet. How did that life change the friendship?
Well, George, I was a hellion.
Yeah. Was she also a hellion?
No, she just participated in, she was the calm one. But I was, I was in a motorcycle accident I should have been killed in.
Oh, my. I
had an out-of-the-body experience that changed everything for me. And it was a radical 180-degree change. It wasn't this slow growing of the face and, hey, I'm making, no, it was like 180. So it was awesome. It was in 1981. So that changed that. And also I moved. And in 81, if you moved back to Seattle from LA, you just drifted apart. So then I have the person who, if I had to describe her now, I would say she is my best friend. And yet we don't, and it's been since the mid 80s. And she and I, when we lived together and when we were in the same subculture of Christianity, for us, I mean, the culture we were in, I was a pastor's wife. We were, it was a subculture. She's my dearest friend in the whole entire world. Since then, a lot of life has happened. She was with me through my cancer battle. I was with her long distance through her cancer battle. But if we were in the same town, I'm not sure how much we could be friends, because she still lives in that Christian subculture. And I'm not saying all Christianity is a subculture. I'm saying how she lives her life is kind of a bubble of everybody is same faith. I worked for probation for 7 years. I cuss. and that would
Was
be
that
hard for her.
before or after you were found there?
What?
Before
I was.
Yeah, before you found Faith.
Oh, before I found Faith. Before
The
I'm
probation.
Not
Were you a probation officer?
Oh, I'm not a probation officer. I work support staff. No, that's what I do now. So I've been a Christian for over 40 years, but I don't think being a Christian precludes you from using strong language.
Billy is so happy to hear that.
Oh, good. So, but I have a couple of friends who I consider friends, but it's very difficult for a person to get to have friend status with me.
Yeah.
Because I've been through a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of mistrust, I'm not going to give that part of me away to you, because if I call you my friend, then that means I am your friend. And I will be to you, I'll be the person who drops everything. I'll be the person who sits there and doesn't talk. I'll be the person who doesn't judge. I'll be the person who shoots straight. And you have to be able to take that, because I would take it from you. And so there's total reciprocity for me. If I call you my friend, I will be your friend.
Yeah, this is taking on certain characteristics, Janet, of being in the mob. I'm kidding. You know what I'm talking about. I'm joking. Where you listen to like Donnie Brasco or the others. Is this a friend of ours or a friend of mine? You know what I mean? Like, that's right. Being in Janet's mob has certain benefits. Yes, she will drop everything. When's the last time you like, when I think of a best friend, at least from like high school and stuff, this is a person I saw or spoke to every single day for probably 4 years. At least I don't remember. Do you have anybody like that? I mean, since you found Jesus and all that stuff?
Oh, Susan her name is Susan. She and I, since we met in February of 1987. And we clicked instantly. And it's funny because other people say she's really hard to get to know. And it was like we had known each other forever the minute we started talking to each other. And that is my friend, who we haven't lived in the same city since the late 80s, 90s, early 90s. And we're still friends. I would still consider her my oldest, dearest friend.
Now, Janet, there are some folks that have texted in and said, hey, my spouse is my best friend. And I get that feeling, because they kind of take over that role of you're with them all the time. And then when you're not with them, you're talking to them, and you're in this incredible endeavor together, which isn't just the two of you, but also very likely kids and all that other stuff. No pressure, but do you look at your spouse, the pastor, as a best friend, or is that a different role? And I'm not trying to diminish it at all if that's not the case. I think sometimes people feel pressure to say, oh, well, my spouse has to be my best friend. I don't believe that. I'm just wondering if that's true.
I left out a significant portion of the story. I got really sick. My ex-husband, the pastor, had an affair and left me.
Oh, I'm so sorry that he can't be your best friend.
No. Although he was my best friend until he wasn't.
Yeah. No, I get that
makes
part.
sense. It was a long time ago, and don't. I'm sorry. Don't be sad. It was a long time ago, and I appreciate your compassion. I am thrilled with the person I've become in Jesus, in God. I am thrilled with it. I've got a hope and a future, and veering off just a little bit. I'm a solo traveler. You guys were talking about
I read an article about that today.
Yeah. I'm a solo cruiser. I cruise.
Where do you go by yourself?
I've gone to Alaska twice. I've done the Pacific coast. I've done the Caribbean. I was supposed to do Bermuda, but because of a hurricane, we went to Canada instead, which was deeply disappointing. But
well, Canada has nothing in common with Bermuda.
No, it does not. And then in 74 days, I leave to celebrate my 65th birthday on a transatlantic cruise from Rome. 15 days.
Are you
And I'm
going?
gonna
You're going solo on this one?
You bet I am.
Well, good for you,
bet.
Jen. And first off, happy birthday. I don't know if we'll get a chance to
Thank
do
you.
this live before. Happy birthday, 65. You still got a lot of tread left on those tires.
Oh, you bet I do. Yeah.
Now, Janet, truth be told, if I were in high school with my bestie and we heard 65, we'd think death's doorstep. But now at the age that I'm in, I'm like, oh no, you're going to go another 35 easy.
Yeah. Well, and you have, okay, this is going to be all preachy sounding. You have to keep doing new things. Otherwise you get old.
Yeah, that's
you
probably
have to.
true.
So, well, look at you. You're going to do your race. And
I was thinking about hygiene.
But
taking up hygiene or something like that.
Every day is a new day. Every day is a new day.
I do have a buddy who is who does that every single year, and he's younger than I am, and he says every single year. No, as far as I know, believe me, I only take him at his word. I've never asked for evidence nor the opportunity to observe, nothing like that. But every year he does the same thing, Janet. He says, I want to do something new. So like next year is like, I'm going to learn to play the guitar. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like where?
I learned to hike at age 60. I'd never hiked before. Don't, that would take like lots of conversation, but I did it. I'm not outdoorsy. I went ahead and started to learn to hike. And then when I was 62, I snorkeled for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And so you just keep doing new stuff. And for me, that is for me. Not everybody has to do it, but for me, if I'm not doing something new, I'm not growing. And if I'm not growing, I'm going stale.
Oh, I'm going to have to try to figure out something. Maybe this marathon thing, which could turn out to be a huge failure. I hope not, but I'll report back on it. Janet, thank you so much for the call. Good luck on your trip. Happy birthday to you. Janet's line is open, 303-696-1971. Some of the texts that have come in here. You and Billy are my closest and best friends. That is obviously Brian Taylor texting in right there. He is the big jam. Good morning. You guys are talking about best friends. My mom just had her 80th birthday party last weekend, and her best friend, who lives maybe 4 houses down from her, now they've been best friends since kindergarten. What a wonderful story. 303-696-1971. Jack, you're on 710. What do you think, Jack?
George, you shock me to say that Canada and Bermuda had nothing in common. They were both part of the British Commonwealth at one point. How in the world could you say something
corrected,
like that?
Jack. They do have something in common, but in terms of vacation spots, not the same.
Well, I mean, who would want to go to Canada today? Anyway, this thing about best friends and about friendship. The essence of friendship is, if you're looking for perfection, you'll never have a friend on this planet. A friend is a person that has enough good features that you appreciate enough that it's worthwhile to overlook the few shortcomings they have, and you don't hold them against them. That's the essence of friendship.
Do you have someone like that? Not just friendship, but a best friend. I know, but so you have many friends. I understand that part, but do you have one that stands above all the others?
George, since my wife passed away a year and a half ago, I've got all of my friends want me to come and stay with them for a week, and they've been so comforting, and they're people actually. But anyhow, it's just friendship, and when you have a debilitating loss like Randy just had, and I had a year and a half ago, and I still have 2 nights a week where I don't sleep at all.
Oh, buddy.
But the reaching out of friendship at a time like that, which is the most important thing I think that humans do for each other. I mean, there's nothing more important. All right, but I hate to be the guy to correct you, but I did study.
No, first off, I love that you correct me. I need to be corrected, Jack. I love the phone call as always, man. I hope you can figure out a way to get those 2 nights of sleep back. But buddy, thanks for calling in.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, man. Hey, that was Jack. Jack's line is open, 303-696-1971. We got to cut away I guess we don't. Hold on, we don't. Well, yeah, we do, but we don't. Like, we don't have Alpine planning today, right? Because it's a Tuesday, even though it feels like a Monday. Well, let's do this. Hey, Lori from Greeley, please stay on the line. The other folks calling in on Jack's line at 303-696-1971, please stick around. I'll take those calls. The more texts that are coming in here. Do you have a bestie? What the hell is a best friend these days? Anyway, before I go, though, let me do a quick announcement to you, something you've heard me say before. You don't have to live with pain in your life. No, a best friend can't take the pain away. They can make it more manageable, though. Here's some good friends to know. They're our friends at QC Kinetix. QC Kinetix uses you to help fix you. That's the regenerative medicine magic. And I say magic in air quotes right here for the Rumble and the YouTube, largely because it's that new innovation that means you don't have to go under the knife. You don't have to have the long periods of rehab. You don't have to go under the great deal of anesthesia. That's the scary thing, is the anesthesia. Give them a call at 303-900-8986. Here's why you call that number, and I'll give it to you 2 more times. Challenge them. You can go to the website, qckinetics.com. Definitely look it up and research, do their FAQs, all the other stuff. But I would never, ever, never make a decision based on that for or against. Pick up the phone and call 303-900-8986 and demand they answer your questions. All the hard ones, too. Ask them about all the success stories. Ask them about not success stories, which I don't even know if they have any of those. Ask them about what to expect in terms of timing and relief. Ask them everything. 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. And then when you sign up with them and you get it done, give us a call and let us know how it went. When we come back, Lori, everybody else, text included, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com. Imagine
You can spread your love right here on 710 KNUS. Awkward to say out loud. Let's go right back to the phone lines. Lori, you're on 710 KNUS. I got a minute and a half for you, Lori.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I was raised in Denver until I was like, I don't know, maybe 9. And we had a neighbor that lived upstairs. She had 3 children. There were 6 of us, and we were in a broken home, a horrible home.
I'm sorry.
My oldest brother and her oldest brother were best friends. My middle sister and her sister were best friends, and then it was her and I. We were 2 and 3 when we met. And to this day, we don't see each other all the time. We don't talk all the time, but we are like best friends. And she just called me Saturday night to tell me her brother was dying. And I had to tell her, well, my sister's diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, no.
And we always get together maybe every 2-3 years. Happy holidays and whatever and whatnot. So I consider her my best friend. I consider her a sister. But I also have, like 4 or 5 other best friends because each person is different and I value them differently. And I only...
And is this a person that you speak to every day, every week, every month, just periodically?
Which person would this be?
Well, the one that you had to, when they called up to say, hey, mom's dying, and you had to say, hey,
yeah, we just have always kept in touch. And I think a lot of it was on her, because I moved out of Denver. I joined the military at 18.
Oh, Lori, thanks for doing that. Thank you for joining. And Lori, would you forgive me? Can you hear that music? They're about to cut you and I off. I can't thank you enough for. I'm glad you told the story, though. Lori's line is open at 303-696-1971. We're going to continue this conversation, but a little something new when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here halfway through the Tuesday show on this, can you believe it, September the 5th already, Labor Day in the rearview mirror. I wonder if that means your local pool is closed. I hope ours isn't. I couldn't get everything together to get to it yesterday. I always like to end up the summer season with a trip to the neighborhood pool, but just couldn't do it. So many things going on. Nonetheless, thanks to all the calls, by the way, on this best friend topic and a bunch of the texts here. I mean, someone texted in too, Billy. The dog text was spot on. Dogs are a replacement for wives, husbands, and kids. Dogs are taking up loads of space in the mountain trails and pooping everywhere. That part is true. I'm blessed to have two best friends. Listen, I love this. I love the sharing that's here. This is fantastic. Also, Alexa letting us know no Stefan until Friday. I imagine he's still having that thing lanced. I made that up. I don't know if it's even lanceable. Nonetheless, here's what I want to talk about. We can shift gears. If you want to talk about the best friend, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. I love that topic. But there's something else that's going on here out in the public. As you remember, the President Trump, is facing 4 separate indictments, one of which is out of Manhattan, 2 of which are federal, one in Miami and one out of D.C. And then the latest one is out of Fulton County. That's Atlanta, Georgia. It's being spearheaded by an elected district attorney named Fani Willis. And there are now efforts by legislators in that state to call a special session to have her removed from her position as district attorney. Specifically, there's a state senator named Colton Moore. Now, you can go to his website at Colton Moore, Colton Moore, 2 O's in the middle of it, coltonmoore.com. And he's got a petition here, an official. It says official petition. I don't know that you can have an official petition online, but this guy says that he has one. It's an official as opposed to the unofficial petitions, which are everywhere. This is what it says. Corrupt District Attorney Fani Willis is potentially abusing her position of power. I just think that's very interesting to begin with. This petition to remove or investigate her has no problem saying allegedly corrupt. Investigate the office of corrupt district attorney. But in the actual body of it begins with Fani Willis is potentially abusing her position of power by pursuing former President Donald J. Trump. And I'm calling on my colleagues in the Georgia legislature to join me in calling for an emergency session to investigate and review her actions and determine if they warrant impeachment. The politically motivated weaponization of our justice system at the expense of taxpayers will not be tolerated. I am demanding that we defund her office until we find out what the hell is going on. That's on the petition. The official petition says what the hell is going on. We cannot stand idly by as corrupt prosecutors choose to target their political opposition, and then there's a place to sign up. Meanwhile, he also sent a letter to Governor Brian Kemp. This was back on August the 17th. And it says, we, the undersigned, being duly elected members of the Georgia House of Representatives and Georgia State Senate, and comprising 3/5 of each respective house pursuant to Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 7B, hereby certify to you in writing with a copy to the Secretary of State, and sure enough, Brad Raffensperger's copied, that in our opinion, an emergency exists in the affairs of state requiring a special session to be convened under that section for all purposes to include without limitation the review and response to the actions of Fani Willis. Now, I'll tell you what Brian Kemp did, but honestly, here's what a lawyer does when they find something that has a legal citation. They look it up. And so he cited pursuant to Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 7B. And I'm here to tell you disappointingly, there's no such section in the law. There is no Article 4, Section 2 that I can find. There's an Article 5, Section 2, subsection 7B, which seems to fit because it says the governor shall convene the General Assembly in special session for all purposes whenever 3/5 of the members to which each house is entitled certify to the governor in writing with a copy to the Secretary of State that in their opinion an emergency exists in the affairs of the state. The General Assembly may convene itself if, after receiving such certification, the governor fails to do so within 3 days, excluding Sundays. So listen, I know it seems like it's a small thing, But dude, if you're going to call out the governor and you're going to try to convene a special session and you're going to do it by means of a letter, and oh, by the way, you're a lawmaker with access to things like lawyers and stuff like that, maybe get the citation right. That just feels like that's a bit of a credibility killer. Unless this was some draft that was leaked, it feels like it starts you off on the wrong foot. That's just my opinion. I'm just one guy. I don't know that much. But the section 4 that he's talking about is constitutional boards and commissions. And within section 2, there are only 4 subsections. So no idea what this guy's talking about. But here's the point. Georgia recently passed a law that empowered the governor to appoint certain folks to take steps to remove district attorneys. Now, these are appointees. Now, several of these reform-minded district attorneys have already filed suit as of just, I think it was August of this year, so just last month. Now, the governor signed the law into existence back in May. And it's just very interesting to me that all of these things are converging right now. And I guess the question that I'm asking, the reason that this one is important to me is that as a guy who was a former district attorney, I prided myself on the fact that there was only one group that could ever remove me from office, and that was the public, the voters. The voters could recall me under the state of Colorado, but no number of legislators, no governor, no attorney general, ain't nobody could remove me from my office. That's a big, big deal, right? Now, the governor could step in under the laws of Colorado and appoint the attorney general to handle certain cases. Of course, I think he's overstepped that in appointing Phil Weiser to oversee all the cases in a certain judicial district until a DA could be appointed in there. But nonetheless, that was the limited circumstance in which someone had authority. But now we have Georgia passing a law. It's Senate Bill 92. And it allows the governor to appoint a disciplinary panel. And the reason that's important is that's an appointment. That's not like the public signed off on it, right? An appointed disciplinary panel that would review complaints and determine punishments, including removal from office for states, district attorneys, or solicitors general. That sounds crazy to me. That sounds crazy to me because how can an appointed person overrule the will of the electorate? Now, we went through this a little bit before with DeSantis down in Florida. Do you remember that? The DA down in Tampa said, hey, I'm not going to prosecute any of these laws that would punish doctors for performing abortions and all this other stuff. Using powers embedded, I think, in their constitution, DeSantis came out and said, well, I'm just going to remove you. If you're not going to follow the law, I'm going to remove you from office. That, to me, is qualitatively different, even though I hate that as well. I don't want any governor to ever be able to remove another elected official. Do not like it. I mean, can you imagine the governor being able to remove the attorney general, especially if they were of a different party? We'd say that's crack smoke crazy, but somehow we've gotten ourselves worked up into such a lather over local prosecutors and with specific regard to Trump that we've decided, hey, we like the idea of someone being able to remove them. And this Colton, what's his name here? Colton Moore, State Senator Colton Moore, elected guy, right? Represents his community. He can do a whole bunch of things, apparently except cite check the law that he cited. But other than that, can do a whole bunch of things. The idea that he wants to impeach a district attorney for a prosecution in its infancy, and it is in its infancy. There's been an indictment. They haven't had even a motions hearing yet or anything like that. That to me spells doom for the future of the criminal justice system. Now, I know many of you have texted in the past and said, well, the system's already broken. It's already corrupt. And once again, the very easy to throw down answer of we should just burn it to the ground and start over. Impossible, by the way. And I'd love to know what criminal justice system you envision. Maybe that's the direction this conversation has to go. Do you want to see politicians be able to remove district attorneys from their offices for disagreements with how they handle their job? Do you want to see that? I don't. I want the voters who put them in place to be able to remove them. That exists. 303-696-1971. That's a high bar, but that's exactly where it should be. When somebody runs for a partisan office, there's generally a campaign that's preceded by a whole bunch of issues being brought up, debates, people traveling around. You get the chance to ask questions. That's the time to try to explore whether or not someone is fit for office. If they prove themselves to be unfit, and I recognize that could happen, or you disagree with the way they handle themselves in the office, isn't the right answer to remove them by the same process that you put them in by? Isn't that how it should work? Isn't that what the beauty of the recall effort is here in Colorado, the ability to do that? What we don't have is the ability for some other elected official to be able to come in and say, I disagree with what you're doing. I'm going to remove you. I don't like the idea, by the way, of the legislature being in a position to impeach a district attorney. I want you to envision a different scenario, by the way. What if the governor was the person that was being prosecuted? What if it was an ally or friend of the governor? Do you want that same governor to have the ability to appoint a disciplinary board that, without your say-so at all, no input from you, to be able to remove a district attorney? That's what's going on in Georgia right now, is you have two things working. You have this disciplinary committee that has the ability to remove an elected official, and now you have Colton Moore and some, I presume, a bunch of other Republicans saying we want to impeach her for prosecuting Trump. Now, they don't even have, this guy doesn't even have the guts to say she is abusing her position. He says potentially abusing her position after calling her corrupt. Do you want some other fail-safe in place for a district attorney if you disagree with what they're doing? I'd love to know. 303-696-1971. I think the other thing that's going on here is maybe we need to reimagine the criminal justice system. If you don't like this one, what's the one you like look like? If we're going to burn this sucker to the ground, and that's what I've heard. By the way, same thing with the FBI. We have all these ideas. The FBI is corrupt. It's rotten to the core. We got to tear it down and start over. With what? Right? Like that's my question for the criminal justice system. Don't like this criminal justice system. Don't like Bonnie Willis. What do you do to improve it? She went to a grand jury. Those are people picked from the community. Went to a grand jury. They indicted him based on these charges. They don't have to indict. They don't indict 100% of the time. There's something called a no true bill. We've seen it a bunch. What do you do with that? How do you make this system more responsive? I've seen a bunch of social media tweets, by the way, after this guy, he posted his letter with the poor citation in there. Listen, and if I've got this wrong and you know Georgia law or you find out something I don't, call and correct me like Jack from Wyoming did. I'm open to it, but it looks like this state senator has completely miscited the law. There's a bunch of people that talk about, yay, finally someone's standing up and fighting. Yay, finally someone. Does it matter anymore what that means? Is just taking any action to derail a prosecution of President Trump, is that all it takes? And again, I think this prosecution is overly aggressive, and I do think it's politically motivated. I believe that. But so what? I mean, now what? Now, because I've concluded that, and a bunch of other people who are favorable to President Trump have concluded that, now we're going to impeach the district attorney, or using this potential appointed board from the governor, we're going to remove the district attorney in order to keep her from continuing this prosecution. Is that how it works? Before we get to a jury, before we even get to the due process that's guaranteed and will happen under the Constitution, we just want to remove the person that makes that decision. Billy was telling me off air that Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, said she will hold hostage the entire federal government budgetary process if it doesn't include defunding Jack Smith's office. Is that where we're at now? Tell me how that plays out. I mean, as we go down this road, tell me what the future of the criminal justice system is if our answer to every prosecution that's begun that we disagree with results in possibly removing that person from office. What's left? What is left of the criminal justice system? Yeah, I don't know, man. And did you, Billy, did you say that was in recent news that she said that? Was there sound of that?
I believe it is. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah,
I believe it was a post on social media over the weekend. Let me see what I can do.
Over the weekend.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, I'm telling you, this kind of stuff, these efforts by these by this Senator Colton Moore and the others in Georgia to remove district attorneys with whom they disagree about their prosecution, that right there is poison to self-governance. You talk about a system, and you can dismiss it all by saying, hey, it's already so highly politicized. One, I completely disagree. But two, so what? Then what's the answer? Oh, they want to make it political? Well, by God, we'll make it political too. Where does this end? How could you know what this is doing? This is solidifying the two-tiered system for the politically elite and you and I. How could ever again some politician be held accountable for their conduct if the answer is, oh, if someone prosecutes them and we're in power, we'll just remove you from office? Doesn't that feel like the kind of stuff you'd read in the paper about some banana republic or some Eastern Bloc country, back in the day? Isn't that what you would think of? It just doesn't feel like America. If Fani Willis is out over her skis, then a jury will tell us that. A judge will tell us that. An appellate court will tell us that. But to have people come in, political people, ahead of time and remove her from office as if to say this prosecution shouldn't move forward. I'll tell you what I'd be inclined to do, by the way. If I'm in that office, or I'm the person that's going to take over that office, or if I'm Brad Kemp and I'm appointing into that office, I make sure I appoint someone who pursues the case just the exact same way, because I would be so pissed off at the idea that politicians tried to come in and tell me how to do my job. That would really infuriate me. And we have seen it now time and again. It feels something else that Billy and I talked about off air, and this comes up, it seems like more and more, and that is, what the hell do we stand for anymore? I thought we were the rule of law people. I thought we were the law and order people. What happened to all that? When did we become the political expedience people? When did we become the party of, hey, man, they're stabbing one of our heroes. We've got to stop them from doing it. We've got to get them back. So here we are in Georgia with a law that the governor signed that allows him to appoint a bunch of people that can remove district attorneys with whom they disagree. And now we have a state senator misciting the law on the road towards declaring a special session. And you should know, by the way, the governor has said, hey, we're not calling for any special session. Kemp has at least said that. Now, I don't know if they can force his hand by getting the 3/5. I don't even know if they have 3/5, honestly. I don't know if they can force his hand into doing it. But this is scary stuff. And you know who I'm afraid for? I'm afraid for our district attorneys. I'm afraid for us to go that direction down the law. What would we do here in the state of Colorado if we had a prosecution against some high-profile Democrat? Maybe it's President Biden. Maybe it's Governor Polis. Maybe it's somebody else. And they had the ability to simply remove us from office for that presumed abuse of power. What would we do? How would you respond to that? 303-696-1971. Let me tell you about Empower Home team of Keller Williams. Again, the real estate thing, you can't open up your news feed without seeing something about mortgage rates. And tomorrow, of course, we're going to have the opportunity to talk with Gabe from Alpine Planning. He's going to let us know what he thinks is coming with those as well. But what you can't know is when the best time to buy is. You can't know that on your own. Unless you know someone who's an expert in real estate, you're guessing. I guessed. And I happened to guess right one time. I guessed wrong one time. The time I guessed wrong was the time I did it on my own. And I regret that. I wish that I had had someone like Gay Ribble in my ear to tell me this is the time to move. And listen, just like you, when I go onto the internet and I look at, hey, what do I think interest rates are going to do? What do I think about prices? If you're going to stay in this highly competitive metro area, if you're going to buy or sell anywhere here, why not go with the person that's been buying or selling here for decades? That's Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team. Very easily after you call them, that's my guess, they'll convince you by answering all of your questions that you should trust them. They'll make guarantees other realtors won't. They'll guarantee to sell your house for the price and in the timing that you guys agree upon, or they'll make it right with money. On average, they sell more faster than other realtors. For more money than other realtors. They also sell more homes, just volume. The volume's ridiculous. How many families they put in new homes. Be part of it. Give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, or you can check them out at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com. Our number, 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. The party of law and order, it seems to me, is on its knees right now. Perhaps its deathbed as we continue to see elected officials and, frankly, parts of the public moving towards simply blowing up this concept of due process and right and wrong under the, what's that thing? Oh, you've got sound. Billy's got sound of, all right, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know her better as MTG, former besties with our own Lauren Boebert. Go ahead, buddy. Oh, for the love of God. I've got the article here. Greene says she won't vote for government funding without Biden impeachment inquiry. That's from thehill.com. She spoke to a local town hall Thursday. She placed other conditions on her vote as well, including eliminating funding for Ukraine. Good God. Withholding funding for Biden's weaponization of government and eliminating coronavirus related mandates. I can get behind that one right there. Did you still have the spinny circle, man? Let's do it.
I've already decided I will not vote to fund the government unless we have passed an impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden. I will not fund the government because I will not fund the weaponized part of the government. I'm not going to continue to fund the Biden regime's weaponized government. So there should be no funding for Jack Smith's special counsel. We have to fire David Weiss, who is protecting Hunter Biden on his special counsel. And we have to rein in the FBI. I will not vote for money to go towards those things. I will not vote for a continuing resolution that funds mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and COVID, because that is over. Joe Biden even declared COVID is over. And lastly, my red line in the sand has always been, I will not vote to fund a war in Ukraine. We have to have peace. So I will be happy to work with all of my colleagues. I will work with the Speaker of the House. I will work with everyone, but I will not fund those things. And
what does work with them mean? If you said, I won't do these things, what does work with them mean? I don't even want to go down the Ukraine road vote. I mean, that's just one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, this idea that, and by the way, when I say dumbest things I've ever heard, smarter people than I have said them. But this idea that, hey, we're just going to stop funding Ukraine and I guess just let Putin win, just let Putin have at it. We can all say, hey, it should be Europe's job. I don't even want to go down that road, man. It's just it's so counter to what the Republican Party stood for when I was a kid. But that's how we got here too, man. We used to be the party of law and order, independent of party, independent of all these other things. And now what we hear is, nope. If you're a district attorney and you're prosecuting Trump and we disagree with the prosecution, we're going to remove you from office. Now, keep in mind, there are provisions in the law that allow a defense to come forward and say this was done incorrectly, this was done unconstitutionally. All that stuff exists, won't matter. They want to remove her right now. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do you agree with that? 303-696-1971. Are we dead as the party of law and order? Because that's what it feels like to me. And I'm selfishly hypersensitive to this because this has been my career field, is the idea that the law matters and should be applied across the board. Now, some are going to say something like, well, what about Hunter Biden? I get it. But the what about thing is not a cure. It is not an answer. What about does not allow you to do. Your neighbor comes over and sets fire to your car. That the what about doesn't give you the ability to go set fire to their car. Now, if you're like, of course it does. That's just the revenge thing, man. That maybe we're the party of revenge. We're the party of political revenge, because when it comes to crime, when it comes to law and order, I don't understand where we're going. I don't understand why we champion anybody who says things like, I'm just going to defund Jack Smith's office. Whether we should have a special counsel or not, that's completely debatable. That's totally legit. But if it's on this is how he used his office thing, here's the thing. If you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene would have said the same thing, whether he had chosen to prosecute Trump or not, that's decisive, right? Because if she'd have said, hey, I was going to vote to defund it no matter what he decided, whether to move forward or not, that's one thing. But it becomes clear it's about his decision to prosecute Trump. And even though I think that January 6th case out of Washington, D.C., I think that one's incredibly political, overly ambitious, and very, very challenging to prove. I think the one out of Mar-a-Lago is spot on, 100% spot on in terms of being prosecutable and a conservative approach to the use of I think that one's the toughest case he's going to face. But nonetheless, here we are. Let's just defund him. We got to defund Smith. That's how we keep the law from being applied to the president of the United States. It makes my stomach hurt. I thought the Republican Party was the party of law and order. I thought the Republican Party was the party of the law applies equally to everyone and we don't have two tiers. By the way, do you think they'd be talking about this if you were being prosecuted? I don't. No one would be talking about defunding anyone's office. Not if you or I were being prosecuted. There are two tiers, folks, for sure, but it's not Republican Democrat. It is politically elite and powerful and us. Those are the two tiers. And if you're politically elite and a Republican, well, by God, you've got your backers saying, we'll defund these people, we'll impeach these people. If you're the Dems, you have folks saying, we just won't investigate or we won't act on the investigation. That's the common denominator. It is not red and blue. It is rich and us. It is politically elite and us. That's the two-tiered system. I say let these cases play out. Let's let a jury, how much more satisfying would it be for a jury to come back and either hang, that means a non-unanimous verdict, or straight up acquit? If you want to pull the rug out from under the prosecutor, it tells me you think he's going to lose. That's what it tells me. If you think he was going to win this, why wouldn't you say, let's get this done? Let's air out this laundry right now. Let America take a look at this. Let jurors that Trump himself helps pick make a decision. And when he wins this thing, that in and of itself will be its own indictment of the system. And then we can move forward with real reform instead of, well, we don't like where this is going. Let's try to kill it in the crib. 303-696-1971. Stephen from Denver. You're on 710. Stephen, what do you think?
Well, I'm thinking about the Ukraine thing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in the last 106 years, how much money have we poured into Europe's mistakes? How much money, men, equipment in World War I, World War II, and then NATO, and they don't even pay their fair share. They were completely unprepared for this whole Ukrainian thing. And we just keep pumping money into Europe, and Europe doesn't even pay their damn fair share of the NATO since NATO began. And maybe Bulgaria was about the only one. That really makes me angry that Europe gets to be all lead the parade with all of their social stuff and they can't defend themselves. And whenever they get their rear end in trouble, they call Uncle Sammy, come on, you spend your money, come on. You know, that makes me mad.
What do you want to see happen, man?
Yeah. You know what? I'd like to see somebody like I saw Trump when he lectured the people in Europe at that table, and he chewed them out like they were bad teenagers about wanting to buy their gas and stuff to heat their homes from Russia. And you know, I think that we should just tell Europe, here, we're going to cut back 80% of what we're putting in, and you guys can cover that other 80%. And if it hurts your country, so be it, because that big bear has been staring at you since 1917, and y'all haven't done the damn thing other than rely on Uncle Sam's coverage.
Yeah, Stephen, I appreciate that. Real quick, though, because I want to try to circle you back to this other topic, but I want to see them pay more, for sure, of their GDP like we do. But let's presume we say, hey, we're cutting back 80%, just some arbitrarily chosen number, and they just don't, and they don't take the steps necessary to keep it going. Then what?
Then Russia's got Ukraine.
But why would they stop at Ukraine?
Well, then, you know what? They've known since 1945. I mean, what's his name? Patton was on that Rhine River. He saw the Russians on one side and the Germans on the other, and he said he didn't know which one to attack.
No, I get
It's
it.
not
But
like some big
where,
surprise. This isn't a big surprise. Well, then Europe falls.
okay, and that's okay. That's a planet that you want to live on, as one where Russia has taken over Europe. How do you think that plays for us?
I would prefer that Europe stands up and puts its own fight up.
I get it. I get it. If they lack the political will to match the dollars that you think are necessary to match it, are there any interest in ours in making sure that Europe is free from the Russians?
For how many more? We've done that for the last 106 years.
I'm just asking you, man, what do you think? Do you think it's better for us or worse if Europe becomes taken over by Russia?
You know, maybe Russia would finally get its act together and become an economic power. I don't know.
Is that good for us?
I don't know, but I know what is
Hold on,
not
you
good for
don't
us.
know? You don't know?
No, I don't.
How
No,
can you
I
not?
do know this.
Buddy, you have a guy
George,
named Putin who is good for disappearing people with whom he disagrees politically. The guy is a mischief maker for the United States all over the globe where they can get involved, Syria included. You think if they're bigger and more powerful, they're going to calm down and be buddies with us?
Oh, maybe Europe will stand up and do what they should have done.
And if they don't,
and how much money do we pump over there that we could
listen?
You know, you talk about school shootings. All that money we send to Ukraine, we could have every school completely secured with metal detectors and police.
Because that's what you see as the role of the federal government, is to provide metal detectors to schools. How is that the federal government's business?
How is it my tax dollars go over and bail Europe out?
Yeah, but because that's foreign, buddy, that's international relations. That's what federal government does, is international relations. Federal government shouldn't be involved in local education. That's part of the reason.
They do a poor job of getting Europe to stand up for themselves.
I don't think that's true. I think that even Trump proved.
You don't think it's true?
No.
Since 1945, Europe has never paid their fair share into NATO.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I'm saying Trump proved that you could get them to pay more, but them paying their fair share isn't the same thing as a failure of international relations, man.
Wow.
I mean, your answer is let them burn. Let them burn. Hey, if they don't pay their fair share, it doesn't matter to America that Russia takes over Ukraine. And then Poland's next. You know, Poland's next. And then what? And by the way, they'd never get to take over Poland.
What happens if you don't pay your mortgage?
But it's not the same thing, man. If you don't pay your mortgage is not the same thing, because you don't truly own your home. You own your home on a promise to repay. That's not the same thing.
Our job is to bail Europe out.
No, our job is to bail us out. Our job is to put American interests first. And if you don't think we have them over there, picture a world in which once Ukraine is gone, Russia decides to dip their toe into Poland. Then we have to go to war. And even if we chose not to honor our NATO obligations, you know who is going to go to war? Sweden and Norway and Finland and Germany and all those others. And when that war starts up, what are we going to do, man? Sit around and say, I guess you guys should have paid your fair share. No, we're going to send boots on the ground over there. So rather than end this thing now with their blood and our money, you want us to put both into that powder keg because they won't pay their fair share. Does that make sense?
You know, I think that my point is really strong since 1945. What have we done? What have we done for these people since 1945?
We have kept the Russian influence from spilling over into Western Europe. That's just a truth.
But Western Europe hasn't done anything in their end. They've done very little in their own interests.
Simple nonsense, buddy. Simple nonsense. And also, they committed troops to our foreign wars, whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan.
Well,
that's what allies do. Man, it's this, and I appreciate the call, Stephen. Thank you. It's this pie in the sky mentality of we're just going to apply everyday common sense principles like a mortgage to what Europe does and somehow suggest that we're doing Europe a favor. We're not doing Europe a favor by going over there and funding Ukraine's defense of itself. We're not doing them a favor. We're doing us a favor. We're keeping us from having to go to war in Europe. That's what how is that so freaking hard to see? Unless you trust that Putin, who has never once ever proven to be trustworthy, ever, that you can point to. Unless you think this guy is true to his word, and hey, as long as you just give me the parts of Ukraine that I say are culturally associated with Russia, then we'll just stop fighting. And by the way, doesn't that sound a whole lot like a guy named Adolf Hitler and the Sudetenland? Doesn't that sound just like that? Oh, well, they're culturally similar, and we're just taking the... Unless you believe him true to his word, aren't we just signing up for a war where my sons, my daughter, your daughters are going to end up going over there and fighting a much bloodier war than we've ever seen? Isn't that what we're doing? Just ignorant. It is ignorant to suggest that this is all about teaching Europe a lesson. We will teach them. They have to pay their fair share, or we're going to take our toys and go home. And then we'll come back in a couple years with our young men and our young women. What garbage. It's just ignorant. And we're going to somehow negotiate a peace with a guy who's never once stood by his word. I didn't even want to talk about that. I wanted to talk with Stephen about this rule of law thing, but this is another one. Where the hell is the Republican Party on this? What happened to the party of Reagan, where we were going to stand up to the oppressors, and Russia is an oppressor? Well, what happened to that? What happened to the idea that we were going to stand up and fight for liberty? And yes, we need to get Europe to pay more of its GDP for its own defense. I completely agree. But this infantile notion that we're just going to simply say either you pay X or we're going to go away, it's dumb. It's ignorant. Tell me where in history that has ever worked. And Stephen's reluctance to say whether it would be a bad thing if Russia got itself back onto its feet economically and became a power that dominated Europe. He's like, well, I don't know if it would be a bad thing. Really? Does anybody on the planet Earth outside of Putin think that it would be better if Russia had control over Europe and was stronger militarily and economically? Would that be better for America? I feel like I'm losing my mind here, man. I mean, I want to have these conversations, but for the love of God, bring something like, not just, hey, since 1945, they haven't paid their fair share. Boom, conceded. Now what? Now what do we do? Now we just go away. We just go away, George. We're going to teach Europe a lesson by allowing Russia to have Europe. We're just going to teach them a lesson. And even though we know that Europe won't ever allow itself to be taken, and we know that there's going to be a war over there, and it's going to involve our NATO allies, maybe we just won't live up to our obligations. Do you believe that? Do you think we should do that? Folks, we're going to war if this thing goes a different direction. Going to war. Is that where you want American blood spread? I don't want any American blood spilled over there for the Ukrainians. That is not my interest. My interest is in seeing them not encroach not one freaking inch more into Europe because of the risk it poses to us going to war with the rest of our allies. And this Vivek Ramaswamy garbage about, I would pledge to never, ever, never let Ukraine into NATO. What's wrong with you? Why would you do that? This is bonkers. You know what's not bonkers, though? My dentist. What a hell of a transition with the gnashing of teeth. Hey, now we're on to teeth. Listen, Twin Aspen Dental Center, the best dentists around. I know that because they are my dentists. I go see them. I don't just say it. I live it. Twin Aspen Dental is Doctors Richter and Snyder, and these are fantastic folks. They have the best staff out there, too. They put you at ease. They do all the heavy lifting with your mouth, including name something that you can have done. The crowns, the bridges, all the other, the dental implants, Invisalign, which is fantastic. They do a bunch of other, they do for TMJ stuff. They can do the Botox injections. I mean, that's not just to look pretty. It actually alleviates some of the stress and pressure. My mom had TMJ before she passed away. Big deal. They do all of that stuff, and they'll do it for you. All you have to do to get the benefit of them is, one, you could drive down there, easy to get to, right about Parker Road and Stroh. You could also give them a call at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. You can check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com, twinaspendentalcenter.com. When you call them up, pretty please with KNUS on top, tell them that George sent you. They'll love that. Hell, maybe I'll even run into you down there. It's twinaspendentalcenter.com. When we come back, full lines, we'll get to those. Actually, one line just open now, 303-696-1971. You can fill it. We'll be back with you, me, and the calls and the texts. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Just by chance, I put that earpiece in because Billy and I were jibber-jabbering. Listen, we're about to hit that magical 5620. Steve, Nick, everybody else, I promise you, if you just stay on through the top of the break, we'll get you on as soon as we come back. But if I put you on now, you get seconds. That's just not fair to you. I want to continue to have this conversation. I started with the premise that the Republican Party, when it comes to being the party of law and order, is dead. I think we've died as far as foreign policy goes, too. American first has become America only here, based on what I'm seeing and hearing. What do you think? Give us a call, 303-696-1921. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com. Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping
I've already decided I will not vote to fund the government unless we have passed an impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden. I will not fund the government because I will not fund the weaponized part of the government. I'm not going to continue to fund the Biden regime's weaponized government. So there should be no funding for Jack Smith's special counsel. We have to fire David Weiss, who is protecting Hunter Biden on his special counsel. And we have to rein in the FBI. I will not vote for money to go towards those things. I will not vote for a continuing resolution that funds mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and COVID, because that is over. Joe Biden even declared COVID is over. And lastly, my red line in the sand has always been, I will not vote to fund a war in Ukraine. We have to have peace.
Yeah, Billy just told me to turn my mic on. You have the power. Can't you flick it on and off? I think from time to time you do that. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. That was the mighty MTG Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia talking about a list of things that were going to keep her from voting for the budget or keeping the government open. But she is willing to work with leadership, but not on any of those issues because those are red lines for her, which is fine. But, you know, initially what started off as a conversation about is the party of law and order and the rule of law dead? Or is the Republican Party dead when it comes to those issues? And I had started to talk about the fact that in Georgia, and more states passing laws to try to have district attorneys removed more easily by, in the case of Georgia, unelected officials, just appointed officials. And this effort by a state senator in Georgia to get the governor to call special session to impeach Fani Willis because they disagree with the prosecution. And again, I don't think the prosecution is a good one either. I think it's politically motivated and I think it's overly ambitious, but the process to handle that is already baked into the system. So I had that conversation, but then when we get to Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Ukraine, all of a sudden we start getting the texts and the calls from folks about this Ukraine issue. And we talked with Stephen previously. I love the fact that he called in, by the way, Stephen from Denver, to say basically, I think we ought to treat Europe like it's our brother-in-law who doesn't pay his bills, and so we cut him off. And if you have to fail and live on the street, that's fine. Or if Russia's going to come in and take over Western Europe and probably put the world at risk for a third world war because those countries aren't going to go quietly into that good night, then we should just do it. We should just do it. So be it. That sounds crazy to me. And it makes me wonder, who are we the party of anymore? Is it the party of America first or America only? And how did we get here? This isn't the party of Reagan. My God, Reagan wouldn't have stood for this. Can you imagine what Reagan would have done had Putin moved into Ukraine? 303-696-1971. Nick from Denver, you're on 710. Hey, man, thanks for hanging on. What do you think?
Excuse me. You're welcome for taking my call. Let me answer this in like a couple of different phases.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Every American president from 1945 on, Democrat or Republican, has complained that the Europeans haven't pulled their fair share. That is true. And the fair share was defined by you have to spend at least 2% of your gross domestic product on defense so that you're capable of defending yourself. Now, what has happened is, as you know, NATO consists of something like, 31, 32 members now? There are 5 or 6 members that actually exceed that. But there are some laggards in the crowd. So it's unfair to it's unfair to lump all the European countries in one big pile. England, France, especially Poland, Lithuania, all those countries that are directly affected by the war in Ukraine, they're spending more than 2% now. Poland is probably spending closer to 3 or 4%. Turkey is spending more than that. So you have to be a little bit more nuanced. But it is true that overall, especially Germany, with the 3rd or 4th largest economy in the world, has not spent what they should have spent on their defense. But just to pull up stakes and leave Europe is just shooting ourselves in the foot. That does not make any sense at all. And if there are a lot of Americans that are getting tired of basically subsidizing the defense of NATO to a large extent, because again, I mentioned not every NATO member is in that category, then we could come up with some kind of a tariff on European goods into this country to make up the difference. But just to walk away from Europe is just inviting a disaster, because that's what we did after the First World War, and we all know the results.
Man, you're singing my tune. You just have a lot more information to give on the details of the participation rates, at least through economic contributions by the different countries. But man, I agree. When I hear things from folks like, hey, we just need to tell them if they don't pay this, then we're just going to take away our funding or we're going to leave. My concern is this idea that this is just Europe's fight, or this is Ukraine's
no, this
fight.
is a global fight.
That's what I think. Why do you say it's global?
Global.
Why do you say it's global?
Well, because everything's interconnected now in this world with computers, and what happens on one side of the world affects the other side of the world almost immediately. So it's very, very hard to kind of extricate one section of the world and say, well, this is what happens here, and that's where it stays. That's not the way the world works anymore. Especially with the trade and people trading with everybody else and all that stuff. It's not quite that simple.
It's not just the way it works now. That's the way it hasn't worked for over 100 years. That's how we got involved in World War I and World War II, because we realized we couldn't just pull up the drawbridge and exist as just the United States. I really think there is an effort here to establish an idea that we can be completely self-reliant, self-sufficient, and we don't need anybody else, that somehow our economy exists purely for what we do for each other within our borders. That's nonsense. And the idea that, the idea that we're going to cut off the rest of the world and just, if you set foot on American soil, by God, we'll do something. But short of that, you're on your own. That's just silliness.
Well, those days, the isolationist thing didn't work out so well, because we got attacked anyway. And especially in today's world with intercontinental ballistic missiles and satellites and all that, everybody is involved. Physical space doesn't mean that much anymore, or physical distance. It doesn't mean that much anymore, because during the Depression years, we thought we could hide behind the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and just do our own thing and let the world do whatever it was going to do. But we found out very quickly that's not the case.
You know, when you talk about things like international relations, I think too often we think we treat it like it's just our buddies or our friends. Like, how would we treat another person when the countries have such different dynamics? Another thing is this Vivek Ramaswamy nonsense of, well, hey, we'll just alert China to the fact that as long as they sit on their hands until 2028, they can have Taiwan unmolested and just take over what I presume to be the 9-dash line, without recognizing that something about what 1/3 of the volume of the world's economy pours through the South China Seas. Like, do we expect China to just be like, hey, America, come and go as you please here in the South China Seas? You don't have to worry about FONUS operations, freedom of navigation of the sea. You don't have to worry about stuff like that. Come and go as you please. This is, I don't know where this is coming from. Nick, can I ask you, are you a registered Republican?
Yes, I am. And that's the second thing that I
me.
wanted to address. I am sick and tired of the Republican Party acting like a bunch of 8-year-old kids. They do not think strategically, but the Democrats do. And this is why I am completely opposed to supporting the existing Republican establishment. We need a whole new crew in there, because the old Republican Party really is dead, has been dead for a long, long time.
Yeah, buddy, I can't agree more. I just don't know what happened. I don't know where all this deep-seated, I mean, I listened to the other big, smarter guys on this radio station after me, the Kirks and the Pragers and the Gorkas. They couldn't be more gleeful about the idea that it is a waste of time, effort, and money for us to be involved in Ukraine. And I mean, to hear Marjorie Taylor Greene say, we need peace. What?
Well, of course, everybody needs peace. Nobody in their right mind wants a goddamn war, especially those people
yourself, man.
who've actually
Really,
been in a war. I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's all right. That's all right. I just want to, I'm sure that folks get the passion on it. I think that the issue is this idea that we're for peace. We don't care about peace. Like, we're not out there fighting we're not fighting in Rwanda or the Congo or Uganda, or we're not fighting in any of those countries to end the genocide that takes place from time to time in those countries. We're just talking about Ukraine because that's where we've decided to draw a line. And we've done it because of the risk that Russia poses.
Now, this is my problem with Ukraine. The Biden administration, after giving the Ukrainians, I don't know how much money, maybe you know, 40, 50, 60 billion dollars, which is a lot of money, even by federal standards. They need to give us an accounting of where all that money has gone.
I want that too.
And they have not done it, and they're not going to do it, because I have a sneaking suspicion, because the Biden administration plays so fast and loose with the money strings, that at least 10% of that money has ended up in the black market. But the very least that they need to do to the American people is to show us where all that money has gone, and they haven't done it.
I agree with that too.
That's why there is so much opposition to the Ukraine war, because we have no idea what's going on.
I agree with you 100%. I want to know where every dollar goes. I worried about that during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan too, like just pallets of money being floated around to different war. I wanted to know the accounting piece too. And we suck at that. We're really good at collecting our money. We're not very good at accounting for how it gets spent. And that's the great weakness of the federal government. But let me ask you this. When you look back on the Republican Party, and I've been a lifelong member, and when I say lifelong, I mean, since I was 18 and able to register, I have been a Republican. I don't recognize the party anymore. Like, I'm not sure what that thing is we stand for. If it's not law and order, and I don't think you can claim that it is anymore, if it's not protection of liberty across the globe and the advancement of liberty, what is it? What is it we stand for?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's why we need to neutralize the existing Republican power elite and come up with a brand new team, because in essence, the Republican Party has much better ideas than the Democratic Party, but it doesn't. But since we're so scatterbrained about everything, we have not won a popular election since 1992. I mean, that is scary. And we need a whole new crew in there. We need a whole new crew in there who can think strategically and who knows how to think to, in this case, for instance, the biggest party in this state are the unaffiliated. There's something like 43% electorate is unaffiliated.
Yeah, we're going to get to 47% here pretty quickly, but I also don't think that I don't view them as a party, Nick. They're a bunch of people who, the majority of whom are going to vote left and vote Democrat all the time. It used to be, when I was younger, unaffiliateds lean to the right. That hasn't been true now for well over a decade. The unaffiliateds lean hard left. But just because they don't wear the jersey doesn't mean that they aren't part of some other ideological movement. I just don't see them as a unified party. And you hear this a lot, by the way, from the folks out there who talk about the no labels thing, like, oh my God, the majority of people are unaffiliated. It's like, that doesn't mean they're interested in an unaffiliated candidate. That's ridiculous. They're not going to vote that way. They're still going to vote. Some people are unaffiliated because the Republicans aren't conservative enough, that the Democrats aren't liberal enough. There are a number of unaffiliateds, my guess is, Nick, who are Republicans in their heart, but they don't want to be at the party of Trump. They just don't want to be associated with him. So I don't know that we can look at that as a vote of anything other than the death of the parties. I think the parties are going to continue to die. Certainly here in Colorado, it looks like the parties are dying on the vine. And it's because they don't offer anything meaningful to people.
Exactly right. They are not speaking to all those unaffiliated or people who are fed up with the existing political system. And that's why we need some fresh thinking and people who are willing to actually put that fresh thinking into action.
Nick, I agree. Hey, Nick, thank you for the great phone call. I appreciate it. Nick's line is open at 303-696-1971. Let me do you a favor, too, as I watch this story unfold here on Fox News about Joe Biden, 80 years old, touting his age. I can't really attest to the QC Kinetix value when it comes to the intellectual wattage piece, but I can tell you this. When you're in pain, that's where your brain goes. Your brain is focused on the discomfort and the pain and how to minimize it. You start self-regulating. Maybe I'm not going to go for this walk, or I'm not going to stay out as long. I can't sit in this chair that long. I'm never going to try to go skiing again. Whatever it is, let QC Kinetix put decision-making back into your hands. Take your mind off of your pain, not through pills, not through big-time surgery where someone's got to drive you to and from the hospital and you've been under anesthesia and there's the risk of infection and the 8 billion waiver forms. Not that. I'm talking about the people at QC Kinetix who have figured out a way through regenerative medicine to use you to fix you. And it's a needle. That's it. You ought to give them a call right now. Ask them all the questions that you have about it. And then say, is this for me? Am I the kind of person that likes no surgery? Am I the kind of person that likes no downtime on the road towards recovery? If that's you, then 303-900-8986 is your number. 303-900-8986 is your number. You can check them out at qckinetics.com. That's qckinetics.com. You can also call them at 303-900-8986. Hey, stick around. We'll get to your text, your calls. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Just a small town girl right here on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you. Lots of texts, and I want to tell you, I would have responded to these more readily, but we hadn't had any in a while, and I'm like, what is going on? That doesn't sound like our listeners. I refreshed the page, bam, and a billion of them showed up here, so I'm going to try to get through these. Let's see. Approximately, did you have any Aurora? Oh, here's a question from Alexa, probably not related to our topic. Approximately how many pages of documents did you have in the Aurora Theater shooting and the STEM shooting? Don't know. I mean, I think we had close to 4 terabytes worth of information in the Aurora Theater shooting. I can't remember how many pages of discovery. It's probably up over 100,000 or something like that. Here's one. DA grand jury ham sandwich grand jury system is defective. What? Not a chance, man. What would you replace it with, by the way, texter? New best friend. Here it is. The ones I love are the ones that are just very thoughtful and don't begin with name calling. So here's this one. You're an idiot! Exclamation point. Get off your high horse about defending Ukraine. My high horse? I don't have a high horse. Did you forget the Cuban Missile Crisis? No one wants an enemy on their border. So I'm sure that letting Ukraine into NATO would be I imagine they meant would calm things down. Besides, if Russia took over all Ukraine, how does it impact us? I don't understand how limited the thinking is out there. And I don't know what shows you're listening to. I don't know who it is that's out there filling your head with the idea that Ukraine going the way of if Russia just took over Ukraine, it'd be like business as usual. If you're Poland, what do you do when Ukraine goes? If you're any of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and you see America shrug off any kind of, what do you do then? Do you just, I mean, listen, if you're Lithuania, if you're Vilnius, take a look at a map. Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, sits right along a land bridge between Belarus and Russia. What do they do if we do nothing to resist Ukraine's being taken over by Russia? And the idea that nobody wants an enemy on their border, we're an enemy of Russia? Russia may be our near-peer competitor, but we are certainly not their enemy. And we have never sought to take any Russian territory. That's just nonsense. Like we attribute to them the same motivations that we have as if we're the same. We're not. Our foreign policy is wisdom is to blame for this anyway. I'm not sure what that sentence means. There's some extra words in there. We asked Ukraine to give up their nukes. Yeah, we did. Along with the promise of a country called Russia. Aren't you glad we intervened and helped them make that wise decision? Russia can't and won't take over Europe. It's an empty argument. That's from Norman. And I said, Norman, call in if you have the guts, because you call me an idiot. You just back it up, man. Just get on the phone and let's have the conversation if you're tough enough to do it. Russia can't and won't take over Europe, just like Russia can't and won't take Crimea or Ukraine. And then where do we draw the line? Well, Poland. I mean, yeah, but it's Poland. I mean, half of Poland. Maybe it's all of. And how much do they need to take over before Europe makes some sort of a military response? And then what do? Norman, we sit back and go, well, it's your war. It's your war, just like it was back in 1939, 1941. It was your war. We didn't need to get involved, but we did. Who's initiating peace agreements while Ukraine's losing tens of thousands of young men? Keep spending and escalating till we spark a direct hot war with the USA or a nuclear crisis. You want Biden leading this war? The economics would be compelling enough to settle this war. God, I love the people that are not Ukrainian and not in Ukraine saying we need to force them to negotiate away part of their country. What would we do if Russia crossed the Bering Strait, came into Alaska, and then the rest of the world got together and said, whoa, peace, people, peace. We don't want a global war. Just let them have Alaska. For the love of God, it's not connected to anything important anyway. It's just Canada. Would we be like, you know what? In the name of peace, we got to let it happen. Or is this a might makes right attitude? Well, we can resist them. We could cause a global war to fight for our territory. But when it comes to Ukraine, we can't even spend money over there to help them defend. And I love the idea that you guys give a crap about Ukrainian lives lost. Give me a break. Come on. You're out there saying we need to negotiate a peace because we care about Ukrainian lives. Maybe they could care about their own lives. Are they being conscripted into service? I mean, last time I checked, they were doing a pretty good job of fending off the Russians. Maybe they would be willing to die to protect their borders, just like we would be willing to die to protect ours. This, me on my high horse, this esoteric theoretical nonsense about, well, it's peace. It's got to be peace, 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 peace all day long. We care about lives. Look at Africa. When's the last time we sent a brigade into Africa or a naval battle group to do war with one of these warlords? Why don't we do that? How many people died in Rwanda? How many boots did we have on the ground there to stop that? It's not about the lives. This is because you want to pick a fight with Biden. You want Biden leading this war? No, I don't. I don't think he's a great commander-in-chief. I don't. That's not the point. That's not the point. I love this too. The folks are like, well, if Trump had been president, Putin would have never dared to do this. Okay, I agree. But why is that? It's because Putin would have feared military reprisal, not a nasty gram, not a thumbs down emoji, military reprisal. So let me get this straight. Because the guy isn't there to put the fear of military reprisal in him, once he then takes the steps he wouldn't have taken but for the fear of military reprisal, we cannot use military reprisal to push him back. Huh? And this, I'm going to negotiate a peace to this within 24 hours, like it's the Iranian hostage crisis? Which part of Ukraine is he going to tell Ukraine, hey, suck it, man, I'm sorry. These guys are just bigger and stronger. What part of Alaska are we going to give up to Russia in the name of world peace and sparing lives? Which piece? How many inches, how many feet, how many miles of Alaska would you give up to the Russians? It's silliness. Listen, we had the great Dennis Prager here last week. I got a chance to ask him questions. He was like, yeah, look, I think it sucks. I don't want to do this. I don't think Russia's right. I think Russia's wrong, blah, blah, blah. We need to negotiate a peace. I'm like, who are we to negotiate a peace? The hubris for us to just suggest that we can decide what part of Ukraine needs to exist. Here's another text. George, I think it's probably George. You don't get it. The reason for Ukraine is to complete America so China can be the world dominant country and not people in the White House and in the military at the heads. Whatever that voice to text software you're using is, get a refund. I want to respond to the text, can't. Here's you on Ukraine accounting. Ukraine has historically been one of the most corrupt countries. Yep. Now what? Please explain why both the times Russia attacked Ukraine, a Democrat was president. I don't know. Maybe they weren't afraid of them. Now what? But they did. Now what? Pat Buchanan said the agreement after the wall came down was no Ukraine in NATO. People are skeptical due to the ruling class lying for decades. Have a debate and bring guests like Buchanan to educate folks. I'd love to have Pat on. Man, I was a Pat Buchanan fan when I was younger. I read his autobiography right from the beginning. I thought it was a great book. I'd love to have that guy on. I don't think he's coming on our show. I'd love to have that guy on. But now what? NATO isn't in Ukraine. Ukraine wants to be a part of NATO, but you think Russia just gets to invade a country because they're like, hey, we need to do this to keep them from becoming NATO? Come on. We had someone in there. His name was Donald Trump. And by the way, the party of the Republic beat the Democrats down during the Civil War, but the Democrats on the left haven't learned a thing. They only know one thing, and that's when you fight back. What are you talking about? What is it that you are talking about, Texter? They only know when you fight back. What does that have to do with Ukraine? Or is what you're saying, we need to impeach Biden because by God, they impeached our guy? Is this that tit for tat stuff we talked about last week? We're now the party of revenge. We're the party of fighting back, even when fighting back doesn't make sense. Even when fighting back is contrary to what our principles were not that long ago. Oh, Biden wants to support Ukraine against Russia? Well, we can't be in favor of that because Biden's a Dem and Biden's senile. So we got to fight back against that. And the other kooky comments like, if we had all that money back, if we weren't spending those billions, we could spend money on metal detectors for schools. Or we could secure the southern border. That false dichotomy, that false premise that we have, like we're going to spend the money on it. If we didn't spend it in Ukraine, we'd spend it on the southern border. We cannot walk and chew gum at the same time, folks. We're America. It's pick one. Eric Manning, George, with all that rage, I often wonder why you, being a patriot serving our country, in which I thank you for your service and all, that you don't play our American national anthem before your show. Why? What? I don't understand. Is that the mark, Eric? Is that what you're saying? The mark of a patriot is someone who would play the national anthem every time they're on the radio? Come on, man. Joan from Lakewood, too angry. See ya. Bye-bye, Joan. What would have happened in 1778 if France decided the American colonies needed to pay their fair share for their military support? Fantastic question. I wonder. What is this? Why you so scared of Russia, bro? I love the bro, and it's just that dismissive kind of condescending thing that substitutes for a real debate. Call in, bro, 303-696-1971, and let me know what you think. Dean from Denver, you're on 710. Dean, what do you think, man?
Well, it's a complicated issue in the Ukraine, but the issue of negotiation relative to Biden, he can't negotiate his way in and out of the bathroom, much less with the Ukrainians or the Russians. I mean, this guy is inept.
Dean, what do we do in the Ukraine? I mean, and how does it speak to what is the principle that is being addressed by whatever we do with Ukraine in the Republican Party? What's that Republican principle?
Well, peace through strength is the ultimate position we want to assume. But, you know, he allowed this circumstance to exist with Ukraine. I believe that Trump would have been in a much better position to negotiate. It was much more apt to negotiate completely. For example, in the case
would he have negotiated? Do you think if Putin had just poured over the border, he would have said, "Hey, quick, let's come to some agreement about your invasion of Ukraine"?
No, he would have. It would have been a quasi-economic issue, and the same thing would have been true. It was true with China. And it was true with Un. When the case of Un, though, he just told him, he said, you do anything to Seoul, South Korea, and you won't even find Pyongyang, because right off the coast, he had stationed nuclear subs. Now, the same thing is true and how he had modified the Mideast was by stationing Air Force bases in strategic positions, well defended, and the ability to strike anywhere in the Mideast at will.
Okay. Well, I'm missing something here, man. And that is,
what you're missing.
Hold on. First off, we're doing economic sanctions right now. We've imposed economic sanctions on Russia. My God, look at what's taken place with their oil and all that other stuff. We've been doing that since the very beginning. It hasn't seemed to deter them. But more than that, what you're suggesting is we should flex military might and post it around like we could do something to them. But then what? Never use it? Just like they invade Ukraine and we say, oh, you better get out or else.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with this philosophy that existed during the Cold War.
Yep.
And I think, there's a deep, deep tragedy in the case of the Ukraine. I mean, all these people have died. All this destruction has happened. The Russians have 150 million people in their country today. They're economically, they're selling their oil to sustain their war effort in the Ukraine. They're selling it to India and China. That's their economic issue today. And they've obviously weakened their military. They've had a lot of loss in the Ukraine.
Okay,
but
and
we're late to the bar. It's just like the war in Vietnam. The situation there was we made a tragic mistake by not bombing the dams to the northwest of Hanoi. Had they done that, it's very difficult in Hanoi or in that area to fight a war when you're up to your neck in water.
But Dean, what you're suggesting is our failure was in not using more direct military action in Vietnam.
No.
How does that apply to Ukraine?
No, I wouldn't suggest that. And I think, unfortunately, we are late to the bar in the case of the Ukraine.
What's the answer, man? What's the solution?
Well, the answer is to move yourself into a peace through strength position.
I know, but we're right now supporting the
We're
Ukrainians
late now.
in the
We're late to the
yeah. So
bar.
what do we do?
I think we negotiate. We aid in the effort to negotiate a peace so that they can start to rebuild the Ukraine.
Well, which part of Ukraine are they allowed to rebuild, and which part goes to Russia?
Well, I wouldn't give the Crimea. I don't know. I mean, that's a hard link that Zelensky has assumed, because the Crimea is critical. Although a lot of Russian
they have
speaking
Crimea,
people in
buddy.
that
Russia
area.
has Crimea. It's not under Ukrainian control and hasn't been. But how about the
Well,
Donbass? You give up the Donbass and say, well,
I'm not. I don't know. Wouldn't give up any more than I possibly had to. But
well, that's what they're doing. Isn't that what Ukraine's doing? They're resisting any attempts to take one more inch of their country. And what it sounds like you're saying is, hey, we need to negotiate a peace. And that's going to require, my guess is, Ukraine giving up more of its territory. Is that where you want to go with this?
Well, I certainly don't want to give up any more than's possible. I don't know the intricacies of that agreement. It would have a lot to do with economics. And the thing is, Russia is capable of, they're selling their oil to China and India. And Russia is also one of the biggest wheat exporters. And so they probably, I don't know if they can sell any to North Africa. They probably
But that wouldn't change, man. We've put economic sanctions on them. That's what you'd suggested. I just don't think it makes any difference at this point now. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, in the case of China, what Trump did was he definitely came with an economic issue. That's what stopped China to think twice about, and that would also continue to stop them in the case of Taiwan.
Yeah, but Dean, he's also in his attempts, and they're just wrong economically, to place tariffs on everything. And he's already proposed in his current campaign putting tariffs on like the rest of the planet Earth to the tune of 10%. That's only going to hurt the American consumer. You and me, that hurts us.
Okay. Let us then hurt. Huh? We deserve it if we have given over our pharmaceuticals and much of our dry goods and so forth to Southeast Asia, particularly more in any case to China, then let us hurt. But I'll tell you what, if you don't think economic issues are a concern of China, that's a wrong position.
I've never said that before. I've said his response to them is not good for America. Now, unless you believe that we're going to tariff our way into a stronger economy, and I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase smoot hawley, but that's what led to some bad times for America within the last 100 years.
I don't know if we can deal. I mean, history may play a role, but I think the more current thing is to recognize the current economic situation, which is very critical to negotiating either with the Chinese or the Russians or in the Mideast, and particularly in the case of the Ukraine. It's got to be their economy, Russian economy right now, less oil, is the same as Italy's.
What? Say that last part again. I didn't hear it all.
I say that the economy of Russia today is about the same GDP as what Italy has.
Okay.
They got 150 million people. They've taken 200,000 casualties.
Okay. I guess I'm missing
the point.
Is that a
winning day?
Yeah, but
is that a winning day at the war?
No,
Would you call that a?
No, I don't listen. I don't think Russia's the country it wants to be right now. But that's the point, man. They want to be bigger and stronger and more mischief making. They don't see a world where the United States functions freely on the planet Earth. They see a world where the United States is put in a box, and it sounds like it's a box that President Trump and others are good with. This America first thing has become America only. And that's exactly what Russia wants. They think there are hemispheres of influence, and they want us in ours. They don't want us anywhere else. They want to be the dominant force in Europe and their part of the globe. They'd love that. That's the exact theory they're going to have that's going to run them afoul of China at some point down the road.
I think Putin is in a position where he wants to establish what he served under in the case of Gorbachev.
Of course, he wants the Soviet Union back.
He wants to reestablish that Russian Empire.
Hey, there we go.
And, yeah.
So we want to stop that, right?
The only way you can, well, first of all, MAD still plays a role. He was wise enough to realize that under both Brezhnev and Gorbachev. The MAD thing still applies on a global level.
Yeah, I guess it does. I'm not convinced we're headed towards nuclear war. I think a lot of that are folks who just want to change things. Hey, and man, forgive me, Dean, we had such a great conversation. I took you long. Thank you for that phone call. I got to cut away for a break after I tell you about a real fighter named Dan Caplis. Dan and his partner, Babar Wahid. Man, these are folks that will do as much as you need and want them to do ethically to go out there and score the justice for you that you deserve. What I mean by that is because these guys have such a track record of kicking butt in the courtroom, and they do have a huge track record. I mean, they have I don't even know, we should keep more records on this, but I know they have the largest verdict against a trucking company ever. I know that they're the only firm that's out there that has done back-to-back multi-million-dollar outcomes. All of that stuff is super awesome, right? But these are guys that because they've done that, they don't typically have to go to war to win the battle. They don't typically have to do that. They can simply show up and say, I represent Mr. or Mrs. 710 KNUS listener here who've been a victim of your client, and this is what justice looks like. Are you going to make a step into the ring, or are you going to do the right thing? And more often than not, they're able to get the right result without having to go to battle. It's just because they have such a huge track record of success. In some ways, it could play out on the geopolitical front, but thankfully it doesn't have to. And that is that people believe them, and they know what their skill set is, and they know what their track record is. If you want proven winners who can go out there and get justice for you or a loved one who's been hurt by someone else, you got to give them a call at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or you can check them out at dancaplislaw.com. That's Dan Caplis, Caplis law.com. When we come back, your calls, your text, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
You know, Putin would have never gone into Ukraine, but that was just on my relationship with him, my personality over his, would have never gone. I used to speak to him. It was the apple of his eye, but I...
What? Trump was the apple of Putin's eye? I'm sure that's a figure of speech in some awkward way that you can never imagine Ronald Reagan ever saying anything like that. I just don't know what's happened to us folks here as a party. We've lost our way. We've become the party of something else. All of a sudden, we're the party of tariffs. We're the party of America only. We're the, I don't know. Listen, let me tell you who's the apple of my eye, especially when it comes to upgrading your kitchen or your bathroom. God, I love the segues. Mitch Flory with the Art of Granite. This guy has been doing it at the top shelf level for wholesale prices. Plus, there's something else sweeter in there, by the way, for you, for many, many years. This guy knows, by the way, communism. He was born and raised in Romania, in communist-controlled Romania, left Ceausescu, came over here because you know what? Freedom is so much better than what the communists had to offer. This guy will also offer you a sweet deal. Not just the wholesale prices, but if you tell him you're a 710 listener or a George listener, you get the bathroom countertop for free with the kitchen countertop package, or the kitchen countertop or the kitchen sink for free with the kitchen countertop package. He'll do it all for you. Give him a call, 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. That's theartofgranite.com, theartofgranite.com. Hey, listen, I can't believe somehow we figured out a way to get it through this show. A jillion texts, some great phone calls. Let's keep it going tomorrow as well. I can't tell you exactly what's going to catch fire, but my guess is it has something to do with both local and national politics, maybe even a guest or two. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.